And here we go.
In 5, 4, 3.
Call to me, lands far away.
Elves have forests to protect.
We need to build a wall.
Dwarfs their mines. Men their fields of grain. But we Harfoots have each other.
For I must now wander this wandering day.
We're safe.
You have fought long enough, Galadriel.
No.
Put up your sword.
The enemy is still out there. The question now is where?
It is over.
Nothing is over! Nothing! You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
Darkness will march over the face of the earth. It will be the end, not just of our people, but all peoples.
Everyone! I am sorry, but their time has come.
The past is with us all. The past is dead. We either move forward or we die with it.
This could be the beginning of a new era.
Away I must wander this wandering day.
To him finally being lionized in the prime and his prime. Fuck.
Do it!
Shit.
Just do it! Don't let your dreams change. Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true!
Luke went from being... Oh, no. Welcome, Slayer Nation. I have some great news for you today. I hope you're all doing great. Nope, that didn't work. One more.
You have failed me for the last time.
Welcome, Slayer Nation. I hope...
If you're tired of starting over, stop giving up.
That is eating away at what you love in order for it to shine. And one man's vision is... Sometimes you don't have to make things better for them to be great again. You merely have to Okay. Hollywood continues to slow boil the culture and crazy. Well, right now, Spider-Man actor Andrew Garfield has stepped up and he's fighting motherfucker.
I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it.
And unbearded dwarves, but Prime didn't stop there. They stapled in intersectionality, individuality, biddigadig-bee, biddigadig-boo.
So it begins.
At my signal, unleash hell.
giant swing.
What's going on, everybody? We're back. And man, it is good to be here and to see you all. Who do we have here today? I see we have David Moore in the house. We got Marco CC565, Renee's Ramblings, Eric K, of course, the king of the mods, Lord Thoth. We got Fletcher Williams. Our great producer, Mexican Ironman, is in the background. And we have an amazing group of people who we're going to welcome into our home today. You know, I missed y'all last week. I thought everybody, would take off for Mother's Day, celebrate our moms, get together with the family. And that's when, of course, all the fireworks started. But I hope all you had a wonderful Mother's Day. We have a lot of news to cover. And Disney lost 10% in its stock value. They also lost $4 billion for Disney Plus. You got the end of the season 1 for X-Men 97, the animated series. You got the video game industry, which seems to be in turmoil, trying to follow Hollywood's lead, and a lot more. So let's give a big Slayer Nation welcome to our amazing freedom fighters. We got these people. They come from the front lines of fun and freedom, and they each one of them represent, the battle line for fearless expression and free thought. First, we have the unstoppable Gothix. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, hello. So happy to be here. Always love your intros. I feel so honored.
Oh, I'm thrilled when you're here. You always have such a cool and calming presence when you when you make your videos or when you're on Twitter and you're dealing with all these cancel culture warriors. I love it. It's inspirational.
You just that's how you got to do. Can't freak out about it.
Yeah, because you could, like the old saying, don't feed the trolls.
Yeah, right.
But joining us with Gothix is we have the Viking of Vision himself from Midnight's Edge. We have Tom and Andre. Tom, that's the man of 1,000 faces. He's like a DJ who can sing and do impressions. Yeah, are you going to do that today? I see you're wearing your Beverly Hills Cop shirt.
I am wearing my Beverly Hills Cop shirt.
There you go.
I love this shirt. This is one of my favorites. Hi, Gothix. How you been?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Doing the best I can. And we have Andre with us, the boss man. And
yeah,
somebody told me he's not in Norway.
I'm traveling. Funny that I am traveling all over the place. So if I sound different, it's because I'm on a traveling microphone today. Oh. But I'm here, the man of exactly one voice.
One voice. You know what? I've been listening to that voice for years. It's going to be, I think in October, it's going to be my 3rd year on YouTube. But like I told you, the first time you had me on Midnight's Edge and I was honored. It's like I heard your voice for years. So it's always great.
How do you think I do so many voices? I got to compete with that.
Let's bring out our last two people. We also have the sharpshooter of cinematic critique and the conductor of the keyboard, who knows gaming lore like no one else. We got Little Platoon and Endymion here.
Hello.
Endymion, we never see each other.
I see Tom literally all the time, and I'm okay with that.
You're okay to get you on Midnight's Edge. That's like the last step. We got to get.
Yes, we have to get you on there one of these days.
Yeah, I haven't been on Midnight's Edge and I haven't been on Friday Night Tights, but besides that, I think I've been on everything else. I think.
Well, I think we'll make the Midnight's Edge happen sooner than later. We'll have to talk in the background here.
Hi, everybody else. I haven't seen Little Platoon in a while. I think last time I was with him was with Critical Drinker, and then Gothix. I was with you. Was it Valiant Renegade or something?
Something like it was like 2 months ago.
Something like that. Yeah, it's been a while. Well, nice to see you too.
It's always good to get the gang back together because we've all kind of streamed with each other in one way or another, but I like bringing people who haven't streamed together. Platoon, how are you doing?
I am okay, thank you. Yes, after 2 weeks of fighting Netflix over copyright and then giving up, I'm now feeling much better. So yes, all good, thank you.
Yeah, I've been watching your Twitter feed with what's been going on. That's crazy. I never heard of behind the scenes commentary being wow.
Yeah, it's been a fun time.
But I thought we would start first with what's going on with Assassin's Creed, and I thought, you want to kick that off? Give everybody kind of like an overview of Assassin's Creed, because I know I've only played one Assassin's Creed game, and by what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, in Assassin's Creed, every game, the lead character is typically from the country that they're focused on, right? In that time period. That's correct.
The only time that isn't the case is Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but that's because it's the golden age of piracy with pirates, and you're playing Edward Kenway, who's a Welshman,
Okay.
But the Age of Piracy was mostly white pirates were the ones that were causing a lot of the troubles. There were also black pirates too, of course. But
Right.
there is a DLC for Black Flag where it's called Freedom Cry, where you do play a black pirate named Adewale. So they kind of did both. Every other Assassin's Creed, yes, you do play someone from that time period. Altair back in the Crusades in Jerusalem, I believe it was. Ezio Auditore in Italy. You have Connor in America, and it keeps going. This is the first time we're actually playing a historical figure in Assassin's Creed, which is Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows.
And so if I understand it, because I did some research on him because they brought this up. I heard once he's supposed to be the first black samurai in ancient Japan. And that was brought up during the Shogun series because you had a professor from Columbia University, I think somebody from Georgetown, say, how come they don't have any black samurais there? And then I've read recently that he wasn't a samurai, but he was someone who was a good friend and served Nobunaga.
All we really know about
given
him,
the title, wasn't he, as an honorific after Nobunaga's death for his long sort of
he was
period of
basically
service. I think he was
a
given the
retainer.
honorific title.
Okay. So what I understand is this is the first time that Assassin's Creed then, it's in Japan, but they're taking a character that is a historical figure in Japan, but is not one that is representative of the culture of that time. Is that pretty much it? No. Okay, tell us.
Basically,
how about this? Like that they have invented a completely fictional character that they have given the name Yasuke.
Okay.
I don't. So the thing is with Assassin's Creed, what they've always done in the past, they've always had historical figures in the games. They have had that. You had Cleopatra in Origins. You had Leonardo da Vinci in Assassin's Creed 2, George Washington in number 3, for example. But you always played a character that was not historically accurate themselves, like they weren't a real person, because then that allows obviously the game developers to have their gray area, if you will, right? Which makes sense, right? Obviously, you're not going to have one person who's connected to every single historical figure in real life, but that's just the nature of a video game. But like I said, this is the first time you're playing as someone who is a historical figure, and the reason why it's not going over well is because one, yes, Japanese fans are just mad because they're saying, how come every other culture that's gotten their own game has had someone representative of their culture, and then suddenly we don't, and that's been a really big problem for them. But also the fact that if you actually look at the history of Yasuke, as cool as it might sound, the reality is that essentially he was a slave brought by the Jesuits who were bringing Christianity to Japan. They brought Yasuke, which wasn't even his name originally. You don't even know what his real name was.
Okay.
He was brought to basically into Japan. Oda Nobunaga saw him. He couldn't believe that he was black because he was the first black man they've ever seen. So they scrubbed him down in the streets. Like they took off his shirt and stuff and scrubbed him down.
Really?
They were amazed that his skin was still black after. So Oda Nobunaga was like, this is amazing. Like this man's not Japanese. So he gave him the name Yasuke, made him a retainer. And essentially what ended up happening was Oda Nobunaga got overthrown by his general. I believe his name is Mitsuhide. I could be wrong from memory serves. He was basically defeated. He performed seppuku, so he ended himself. And then Oda's son did the same thing. And then Yasuke basically, without the political power around him, because he was just a guy that arrived with the Jesuits, he was then given back to the Jesuits by, I believe, Mitsuhide, who betrayed Oda Nobunaga. And then we never heard of Yasuke again. After that, he was gone.
Just disappeared.
That's all we know. There's nothing else. We don't know if he got married, if he had kids, how long he lived, nothing. Right?
Okay, so is this a DEI construction partially? What Ubisoft is doing, or is it?
I talked to Grums about this. What Grums was telling me based on his sources he was talking to people that were actually working at Ubisoft. And what I understand, what Grums was telling me is that Ubisoft apparently did not do this because of DEI reasons.
Okay.
They did it to differentiate themselves from other Japanese games. Because, for example, of course, you have Ghost of Tsushima, stars Jin Sakai, Mongol Invasion. Okay, so you have him. Then you have Rise of the Ronin, which is another game that came out recently, which I think is a good game. But that also doesn't take place during Oda Nobunaga. That was during when the West was really coming into Japan, like bringing all the muskets and everything, and huge thing. And that one has a bunch of historical figures too, like Sakayama. He was like this wandering samurai that eventually got assassinated, but he was a big thing. Anyway, apparently the reason why they did Yasuke is because that was to make them stand out, if you will. And if they were looking to get people talking, it worked.
There was an IGN article sort of along the same lines. That the author is I think a Korean American and was at pains to stress that Asian Americans, not that they should be most relevant, but Asian people generally, shall we say, are not a monolith, they were at pains to point out. But they, as an Asian American, did not feel sufficiently represented by yet another samurai hero. Leaving aside the fact that many Japanese people might, they said that one of the great things about choosing Yasuke is that it would allow them to stand out from all of the other samurai protagonists that we've seen in games recently. And I was reading this article thinking, yes, what I really want from my covert assassin is that they stand out from everyone around them. That is a core characteristic of all secret people. You can spot them immediately. They can't blend in. Great character choice. Well done, guys.
I feel like, but the only thing I could push back against that in terms of Ubisoft's, I guess, defense somewhat, is that you do have two main characters, right? You have Yasuke and you have Naoe. Naoe, however, is also kind of annoying because she's another, the last few Assassin's Creed games, aside from Mirage, where you start a Islamic man, they've all pretty much made the female versions canon. Valhalla, Eivor is female, which kind of doesn't make sense either, because why would a female chieftain be the leader of the invading Vikings going into England? That was not a real thing, but they did it for, whatever pandering reasons. Same thing with Odyssey. The canon choice is Cassandra, who's a female Spartan. Female Spartans never existed, but they did that too. And which is funny, though, because in both those terms, they made the females the canon versions. But if you look up the reveal trailers or the covers of those games, they both feature the male counterparts instead, because they know that the male counterparts will sell them more copies.
Gotcha.
So they're kind of playing both sides.
Well,
In terms of shadows, though, Yasuke is apparently, because from what we understand, what they're trying to go for, you have two characters. So Naoe is going to be your assassin character going around assassinating people, whatnot, being stealthy. Yasuke, from what we understand, is just going to be this like bruiser, big samurai guy that just kind of kills people, which then at that point you got to ask the question is, why is he being made that way in an Assassin's Creed game? Because that's not what Assassin's Creed's about. Assassin's Creed's about running on rooftops and climbing.
Being covert, right.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't make any sense.
I'm dying to hear from Gothix. What do you think about this?
I mean, this to me just screams DEI incentive, because I've never played Assassin's Creed, but from my understanding, it logically doesn't make any sense to build a game surrounding a character that people know little knowledge about, and it's not even representative of Japanese culture. I don't know. I think they're doing it on purpose. I hate to think that they wouldn't know that they're not going to get some type of backlash from this. I'm a little bit more cynical when I think of these gaming companies that make these stupid decisions. I think the people sitting up top want to intentionally destroy what they've built. That's just my take on it.
Well, I think you could be spot on. What I'm interested is, look at the people here. It was released, I think it was Learning from Law just shared this a little while ago on Twitter. This is the Meet the Diverse Team of Assassin's Creed Shadows. From the narrative director and lead writer, you have the team embodies diversity, most unexpectedly, a group of white Western liberal women who seem to dislike their skin. So this is the diverse team who's basically impacting all of us.
Can we talk about this, by the way? So that lady on the left there, Sachi Schmidt Hori.
That's the activist.
Holy crap. Can we talk about her? If people don't know, let's get into the lore, everybody.
Okay, well, good. But how does everybody feel being lectured by these diverse white liberal women?
This isn't satire, right? This is actually the team.
No, this is real. This is
the team.
This is real.
Oh wow!
That lady there, Brooke Davies, she was in the reveal behind the scenes trailer once they revealed the official trailer versus live stream. That's Sachi lady. So she wrote a book. What was it called? Leaning the Boys. What was the name of it? Basically, it was a book about the romantic relationships between Japanese monks and their young protege boys that they would get from these rich Japanese families. So there was this whole thing where like the Japanese monks would take in these little boys and teach them a bunch of things about Japan. Yeah, and then
I
eventually,
have the article.
once they became a certain adolescence, they would become romantic partners with these old Japanese men. And basically, that Schmidt lady was trying to normalize this, which is, very weird to say the least. And then her next book is about something called, what was the term? Something milky.
Here it is. I got it right here. I got it right here. Here it is. I pulled the article up because this woman is
even if I explain it, you're going to be like, you're lying. Like,
no.
I know. Just like put it up as proof. It's messed up.
She's a fruitcake. She's a fruitcake. Here we go. Where is she? Senior writer for internet. Okay, there it is. Platoon, what do you think about that? Do you like being lectured to by a pack of blue-haired white liberal women?
I don't like being lectured to generally. So no is going to be my answer. I mean, beyond obviously the race swapped character, or what, not race swapped character, but the curious choice for the race of the character, I don't know enough to be able to say that the game will be particularly hectoring or indeed lecturing. It's theoretically possible they could do this and turn it into a really, really well-rounded, well-written character who absolutely deserves to be in the game as a protagonist. It's not impossible they could do that. I think it's very unlikely that they're going to do that, especially given their past record. But on choosing someone who is a real historical figure about whom almost nothing is known, that's not necessarily a bad approach. It does give you an awful lot of license and leeway to create your story with this person. You're anchoring them in time and place. You are anchoring them with certain relationships which previous games haven't necessarily done. But you are giving, because there isn't, an actual autobiography or a biography of the character, you can do pretty much what you want with them after that point. So you can see why they would choose the character for that reason, but I would then have to point out that applies to virtually every person in Japan at the time as well. So there must be a different reason why they just happened to have chosen the one black person in the entire country. I don't know. Maybe they'll surprise me, but I doubt it.
Here it is. Here's the article. So I'll read what Endymion was trying to get to.
I found it here if you want me to go through it fast. The book's called Tales of Idolized Boys, Male Love, and Medieval Japanese Narratives.
Yeah, here it is. It says her biography on Dartmouth's website confirms she's an activist. I'm interested in investigating how gender, sexuality, corporeality, and power are represented and negotiated in pre-17th century Japanese narratives and illustrations. And like Endymion said perfectly, my first book, Tales of Idolized Boys, Male Love, and Medieval Japanese Narratives, which is on Medieval Chigo Monogatari. I do not know what that is, but Buddhist acolyte tales, which often depict romantic relationships between Buddhist priests and adolescent boys. These tales challenge a host of normative and moral standards we academics especially internalize, including such ideas as sexual orientation, transgenerational sex, which I don't know what is transgender. Oh, I get it. And
okay,
transgenerational sex is a way of saying something else.
It is, yeah. This is incredibly irritating because as a point of historical interest, she's absolutely correct. And it's not just in Japanese society. It's a general point across almost every ancient society. The ancient Chinese did it. The samurai themselves had this tradition. I think it was the uke as the adult samurai and the seme as the trainee samurai. The ancient Greeks did it. The Spartans themselves did it. The Thebans in Greece did it. The Romans weren't quite so keen on the practice. But almost every ancient society you care to name had not just the acceptance that this sort of thing would happen, but almost the social expectation that it would happen. So as a point of historical fact, it's true, and it's interesting to study as a point of historical fact. The problem is that you get people like this coming along who are explicitly billing themselves as activists, and they're not actually interested purely in studying the past and the relationships that formed and the way that social hierarchies formed and all the rest of that stuff. They are quite clearly, as that brief there said, interested in challenging heteronormative archetypes. They're looking at being subversive. That means that you're not just interested in the facts, you're very much looking at what the fact can teach us about the present. And I think that's the point at which it becomes something less than nice to be looking at this sort of thing. I don't particularly think modern society needs to learn from intergenerational relationships amongst the samurai, for example.
I would say, to put it in blunter terms, I think they're just trying to normalize a bunch of shit that shouldn't be normalized, basically.
Exactly.
I mean,
I guess.
Are they saying what I think they're saying with transgenerational?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The P word.
Okay. So you're talking about, guys in vans trying to hand out candy. Okay. Yes. I just wanted to make sure. Now, what is the point of that? I mean, I could understand it in an academic setting. Somebody wants to study this. Are these, like we just saw with the Assassin's Creed Shadow group that diversity team, right? Are they doing this as more as activists? Is this something they believe in? Are they in many ways? I sometimes think it's kind of like that misery marketing. Are they just trying to trigger people? I mean,
I said, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think the vast majority of people in positions like this actually believe the stuff that they're espousing because they were brought up in that environment. It's like if you consider people who believe that type of rhetoric grow up and they become teachers or philosophers and they teach another generation, you sort of like get conditioned to believe all of that stuff. There's a possibility that someone like this is probably doing it for money, perhaps. But I think the overall point, and we see this within gaming, we see this within cinema, is that all of these things that they're trying to promote, you know, the transgenerational love, it's really to destroy the nuclear family. It's a Marxist tactic that they're sort of baking into our entertainment.
Okay.
Exactly. And also, when you look at all of these DEI programs, like for instance, the one that Xbox themselves revealed, what is very clear there is that not just Xbox, but all of the companies that want their games working for Xbox, not only do they have to hire companies like Sweet Baby Inc., they also have to hire as many activists as humanly possible and completely change the makeup of their company and their staff. Now, they don't say those in those exact words, of course. There's various rewrites, but basically you have to hire activists. And when you have enough activists on the team, then that circle is going to be self-containing, because now it's no longer something you have to do just in order to get published on platforms like Xbox. Now you have true activists, true believers in the cause. That
if you look at Activision right now, they have every single team in Activision, which is owned by Microsoft now, they have to have a DEI officer on everything.
Exactly everything. Same thing. And that is just ensuring that that you don't pay too much attention to what gamers actually want, because you are no longer trying to reach the existing base of gamers. You are trying to reach a non-existent or base of hypothetical future gamers. Billions and billions of them that aren't playing games right now, of new diverse audiences that they're hoping to reach. That at least is the official excuse. If anyone truly believes that, I don't know. But like, for instance, this is what the new head of Xbox is even doubling down on, how they have to reach all of these new gamers. And this is how they officially claim that they're going to do that.
Well, what's interesting is that Grums put up this post. I'm trying to find right now. He put up this post about how there was a senior 3D weapons artist who was talking, who originally shared his criticism. Come on, what's going on?
It's funny because of that, because I DM'd Grums that.
Oh, you DM'd him?
Look at this, and he's like, "What the hell is this?" And I was like, "You got to let people know." So
well, he says, Michael Callis says the concerns and criticisms around Assassin's Creed Shadow are valid, and I personally think it might disrespect Japanese culture with a provided historical inaccuracy. People, especially Japanese people, have full right to oppose trends like this. And it looked like 2 hours later, he ends up writing this. I've noticed criticism regarding my recent comment about AC Shadows. After reflecting on it and reading your response and retweets, I realize I owe you an apology. First of all, I acknowledge that I am not qualified to share statements or discuss such topics. Your feedback has highlighted the importance of being more informed and respectful in my opinions. It has also shown me that we should be more open to new ideas and not restrict ourselves too much while creating new worlds. It basically goes on, blah, 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 blah.
You're not creating a new world. That's not what Assassin's Creed does. Assassin's Creed quite explicitly does not create new worlds. Assassin's Creed is supposed to be set very specifically in places in history, amongst peoples who existed in history. It can play fast and loose with the details, and of course it has that. I don't actually know, but it's been ages since I've played an Assassin's Creed game. I think they've probably got rid of Desmond by this point, but like, you have the modern storyline that you can be much more creative with, but that's not what you're doing. Also, the people who probably bullied this guy into changing their opinions, what makes them more qualified than he is to share their opinions, given that most of them are probably white people in America, like him? I assume that's what he is as well. Why is he not allowed? Well, there is that. But like, why are they so much more heavily qualified to comment on what Japanese people are allowed to feel offended by than he is?
Right. That's a good point. Tom, do you think the guy was bullied? Was he did he break down and bow down? I mean, is this something that he was afraid for his job, or he was just afraid of being canceled on social media? Tom, I don't think you're there. Gothix.
Sorry, what was that? I'm so sorry.
No, no, it's okay. What I was curious is for all of us to talk about is, I mean, do people today, like this gentleman, is he worried about his job, or is he more worried about his social media presence? Like, which one do we think? It's like, did he do this because he was tapped on the shoulder at work, or he's just worried about how people are going to feel about him?
I'm sure there's a part of that. I'm not exactly sure which individual we're talking about right now.
He was the 3D
weapons designer for Witcher.
He basically came out and he was agreeing with everybody on Assassin's Creed, saying, I understand your positions, I get the criticism, and then a few hours later he's like, sorry. I heard all
probably got pressure. Because that's the thing, is that we've learned quick that the powers that be are more afraid of the Rees than they are of us.
Right.
And I don't understand that. They're more afraid of taking our money than they are dealing with the wrath of the SJWs and the activists and all that stuff. Yeah. So like in that respect, yeah, it was probably a buckling situation. I'm not much into gaming, so I don't know too much of the politics that go on there, but I can imagine they're a lot like Hollywood. And if that's the case, then that's probably what it was, is he got a few nasty emails or phone calls for saying that.
Absolutely. That's what it looks like. Because remember, he didn't say anything bad to begin with.
No.
And suddenly he's apologizing, which means that he didn't take hard enough a stance on the quote-unquote right side of history, and he got an instant struggle session for it. So he instantly had to come out and apologize to correct his ways.
Well, Gothix, you used to know a lot of those people. It's like, do they like do a behind the scenes struggle session and say, get your ass out there?
I think that's just human nature in general. It's not even specific to the gaming space. It's just once you get a hint of that, as you said, the struggle session and people coming at you and questioning why you're taking a stance or not a firm stance enough. It's like, I think a lot of people, there's a combination of them just being afraid of what could potentially happen to their reputation or their career. And I think oftentimes they will apologize because they think that it's going to keep the mob at bay, which is interesting because the mob is just their own side. It's like they're siding with their abusers, and they don't add two and two together.
Okay, that's good to know. I was looking at CD Projekt Red. I know Endymion, we talked about that, I think, on Flashcast once. But I didn't realize how much they've embraced DEI. So I went through them last night, and I went through their whole DEI project to just look at this. They won an award. Now, everybody, this is a little weird. They won an award for their menstrual leave policy last week. Diversity.
Andre, can we get that? I'm menstruating right now, just so you know.
Yeah, me too.
That's very progressive of you.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'm like,
you want time off?
Tom,
the answer is no.
Are you telling us something we didn't know?
No.
Are you officially?
I think Andre saw through my bullshit.
Okay, I thought you were coming out.
Midnight Edge does not have a DEI policy. So
no didn't earn it policies. No, you got to work. No, but it goes on here. It's like, so I wanted to know what the hell the policy was. And it's like each menstruating employee can take one additional day off per month. And I'm like, how far?
Notice how that is a good way of encouraging every single man in the business to instantly become a they, them. Because
I was going to say the way it's worded. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andre.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because in South America a few years ago, there's about 80 soldiers in the one of these armies in South America that actually just said that they were women all of a sudden because women actually got better benefits than men did. Sorry?
I think that happened in Spain. So you had a bunch of soldiers. Yeah, there's better pensions and better benefits. And so you had a bunch of soldiers declaring that either they were non-binary or that they were women. Like one of them very quite amusingly said that my inner self is a lesbian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so
okay.
good.
And give me the benefits, please.
He said something. It was like on the outside, I'm a heterosexual man, but on the inside, I feel like a lesbian woman. And they're like, okay. So he got like 15% more money per year for compensation, whatever. So they're just gaming the system. And I
Can
mean,
he
good for
change
them.
what if he changes every day? Does he get a bonus for each different category?
I don't, I'm pretty sure women as well. Women can also retire earlier. So just say you're a woman, and then you get to retire earlier.
And here's
like-
the beauty: if like
There you go,
here,
you
if a straight man comes out and says, you know, I'm a straight man on the outside, but on the inside, I'm a lesbian woman. He's going to get all of those benefits, and no one is going to look twice at him for still only fancying women.
That's my go-to. If I ever get canceled, I'm non-binary.
Yeah.
You're non-binary?
You can't say it. I am.
Well, I've been a lesbian since high school.
Yeah, me too. I love women. I'm really into
I love
them.
women.
So I am a lesbian. Yes, it's true. I can't
I
help
mean,
it.
Gothix, you've seen this change over the last few years.
Yeah.
I mean, what's next? He's going to identify as a fish. Maybe
You can. Yeah, anything is possible these days. I can't keep up. I mean, I'm just sort of confused. You know what the hilarious thing about the left is that when they talk about diversity and inclusion, their ideologies always conflict with one another. So they're saying that you have a menstrual leave thing because I saw it said we recognize the biological differences. But then if you were to say that in the same universe of we support trans rights, you'd be called transphobic. So which one is it? Do you acknowledge biological differences or can men get periods? I'm very confused.
It's crazy, and what's funny is, and this hasn't nothing to do with gaming, but in many ways it does with just our culture in general. About a week ago, did y'all hear that there was like a portal? It was like a portal set up in New York and one in Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They set that portal up, and I think it lasted, what was it, 2 hours? It was just someone. Hold on, I have to show this for our audience who doesn't know. So they set up this portal, and so people could connect. You know, make the world smaller. Let's see each other, and it's huge window. And what happened is that within an hour, you had, what was it, a TikToker or an Instagram
It was
gal?
an OnlyFans model.
Yeah, and an OnlyFans model. She basically, you know, flashed a little bit of skin, pulled off her top. But what was funny is the way it showed society. Here it is. So you have this eye. Everybody can see the eye. So on the other side, it's Ireland. They're like, hey, what's going on? And she just flashes herself. And I'm like, look at the place that we've come from.
Say it's amazing.
I'm surprised
that we
it took
haven't
that
gotten
long.
one single leaked picture from the other side of that event.
Say that again, Andre. I didn't hear you.
I think it's funny that we haven't gotten one single leaked picture so far that I know of from the other side of that event. We've only gotten like the New York side from her back, but we haven't seen anything from the Irish perspective, if you catch my drift. So they evidently didn't record. But to be fair, it wasn't just that thing. The Irish did something too. There was like someone on the Irish side that went straight up to like that one camera there, and he played back pictures from 9/11, from like when.
Really?
Yeah. So you have the best of human nature in both sides. So on both sides of that portal, they soon put up fencing so no one can go all the way up to the camera.
Wow.
I just love how they said the portal's like this live streaming technology. It's like, guys, it's a camera.
Yeah, it's FaceTime, yo.
Like, relax.
Yeah, it's shit we've
We're
had
acting
for
like it's some
years.
freaking like Star Wars
I was
technology.
surprised it took
like,
that
oh my
long
God.
for somebody to show their tits.
You know what I'm amazed at? That this thing has now been there for almost a week, and those are the only two incidents that we have reported. So
There was another one
fine.
where
Okay.
someone on the Dublin side put their phone up to the screen and they had the Twin Towers falling
Yes,
down.
I just
And
mentioned
everyone on
that.
the New York
That's
side
the-
was like,
that's the other
"Oh,
one. That's the other one. So those are the two, just those two. Beyond that, we haven't heard of any kind of major incidents for almost a full week. I would say that's a win for humanity.
You think that's a win for humanity that it just took a week?
No, that it's just two incidents. When it's 24 hours a day for a week and you have two incidents of 30 seconds each, of course, those are the ones that gets the attention. But that means that for 24 hours a day for a week for the rest of the time, other than a sum total of 1 minute, I'd call that a win. It's just
Considering it
you
didn't
can't
take
just
that
be
long.
deceived by the headlines.
Considering it didn't take that long for Shia LaBeouf to get graped when he did his little experiment, I'd say that's a win.
Well, wait a minute.
wrong.
Talking about Shia LaBeouf, I wasn't going to talk about it today, but that's a good point. Real quick, Francis Ford Coppola. Did anybody see his little his teaser for Megalopolis?
Yep.
Okay.
I did not know.
Oh, okay. So it's the film he's been working on for what is it, Andre? 10 years?
20
or more?
years.
Yeah, Tom actually knows much more about that than me, but yeah, I do believe 20 years actively working on, and even longer than that for the idea stage.
So he's been Tom. So it's been 20 years, and he has. But I've noticed that the articles over the last 8 weeks. I mean, he's been under attack. I was talking about this with Robert Meyer Burnett over the last couple of weeks, where it's like Hollywood has been trying to actively, it looks like, cancel him because of that he's trying to work outside of the studio system. He's funding it on his own, but that he has hired like Shia LaBeouf and John Voight, who are in the cast. And I had saved this clip. I was going to do it at another time, but I really want to show y'all. So Francis Ford Coppola is going to cons, or was at cons, and he was being asked about Megalopolis. And what I found interesting here is the fact that here is a legendary director, right? And they're talking about the movie, and he's trying to explain what the film represents, because he's like, is our republic coming to an end? He sees the way everything in politics is destroying everything. And they ask him about Trump. So when they're talking to him about Trump, he's basically giving a typical answer that you would think from someone from Hollywood would, right? But then he shifts over to John Voight. And what I found just so amazing about it is you have someone who looks to be very liberal. He has people from all walks of life in his film. And I wanted to share that with y'all because that's how we used to be in society.
It was nice, wasn't it?
It was beautiful. I mean, it's like we could have different opinions. Here we go.
Are in charge. It's obvious that in your film there's hope, but how afraid you are about our future, and what do you scare you the most? Maybe that men like Donald Trump are in charge. Thank you.
Well, men like Donald Trump are not at the moment in charge, but there is a trend happening in the world, and I don't want to monopolize this. Other people, anyone who has but there is a trend happening towards the more neo-right, even fascist tradition, which is frightening because there are, anyone who was alive during World War II saw the horrors that took place, and we don't.
So here's the point. Right after he's done with his statement, he turns around and he's like, what does John Voight think? Here it is. I got to get better at trying to flip these screens.
You're doing your best. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. It's just, it's. I always wish they'd make it automatic. Okay, so he goes to John Voight.
I think that your longing to contribute to that has created this film. That's what your focus is to make a better world for where are we going? And I think we're all at this moment and asking that question of ourselves. Where are we going and what can we do? I'm a little older now. Some of you may have noticed that. And of course, I have a limited amount of time. And I think to myself, what can I do to encourage us toward a better world to protect these kids? I feel that's exactly what I'm doing. It's in my head every second of the day to see what can we do to make this world better. And I know it's possible. I agree with this film, Francis' vision that says human beings are capable of solving every problem we get ourselves into. We can
see. What I love about that is how many of y'all miss that. You got Coppola on one side, who's obviously has different set of ideology and politics, and you got John Voight, who has been pretty much blacklisted all over Hollywood because he supports Trump. And he has him there. Not only that, he hired him as an actor, and he's like, "Hey, go ahead for it." I mean, I miss those days. I don't think Disney would hire John Voight.
No, I think that's the reason why when you watch a lot of stuff these days, it all feels like it's coming from the same mouth, right? Everyone talks the same, everyone thinks the same. And that's why it's boring. And it's why, like, I don't even go out these times, most of the times, and watch movies anymore, because I know that they're just going to be, you know, talking down to me in some sense. Like the new Planet of the Apes, apparently the main villain's based on like Elon Musk. Like, okay, cool, I guess. Like you can tell that was from some leftist person's mind doing that. Just stuff like that. Like it just, they're not hiding it anymore. So I just don't support these things. And clearly things are burning because there's a lot of people that are doing the same thing. And that's just how I'm doing it. So
yeah,
I gotta,
screw them.
I got to correct something there. That stupid headline that I can't remember the stupid outlet that put that out there. That stupid headline about Elon Musk, if you read the actual quote, it's not saying that at all. But they ran with it as a headline. And that's part of the problem, right? Like that's a big part of the problem we have right now. And it's, I think, a big part of the problem with the media coming after Francis the way he did. And you kind of answered your question early on. Why are they doing this to him? Well, first of all, because he did it outside of the studio system, because he's hiring all these people that Hollywood considers, you know, problematic. And he's also an old white dude. Like the amount of effort that they're putting in trying to cancel him right now is hilarious. Like you saw him, how frail he is there, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like he is literally at the end of his life. Like he knows, like he's been saying this for like the last couple of years. He's like, this is it. This is my swan song. I'm putting everything I have into this movie because I know I'm not going to be here for long. And this is the last thing I want to leave, you know? And they have been trying to say that they've been trying to Me Too him and all sorts of other things. I'm like, I don't believe a damn word they're saying about this because they're just trying to make him look bad because he's an old white dude and he made a movie outside of the studio system and he spent just as much money as the Marvel movies did and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't their money and their plan, and it doesn't have their message in it. Right. So the movie might be crap. I haven't seen it yet, obviously, but I can't wait to see it because I hope the movie is actually good. And it's the type of movie we can call them out on their bullshit on. Because a lot of the stuff they're trying to run with is like, oh, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, it has one of the shortest blurbs as far as what it's about than I've seen about a movie in a long time. I don't understand how you couldn't understand the movie. It's an updating of a Roman story. Right? Like,
oh, that's great.
Yeah. So like, I don't even understand where they're coming at him like this other than the reasons I just said. Because like the stuff they're coming up with is there's no way that this old man is doing that stuff on the set. Yeah, I believe he's maybe smoking a bunch of dope in his trailer for a while, but he's old. He probably has cataracts.
Who cares? He makes great films. He's a legend. But I gotta stop there.
He's
for a
the
second.
Godfather's daddy. Come on,
He is the Godfather. But I want to hold 1 second. Put up one moment. This is the first time we've gotten Mexican Ironman. Are you there? We got to bring this up. This is the first time we've ever gotten 50 George the Giant Slayer memberships that were just gifted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's never happened before. So, see, I got to get that applause button. There you go. Thank you very much, Greek Light. This is the first time. Go grab your memberships because we're going to see after every show now, we're doing something different. We go into a membership mode. So after the show is done, we're going to stay for another extra 20 minutes. Whichever one of the panelists wish to stay with us, they can. Or if they have to go, they can go. And we kind of have a little more of an uncensored version where it's just for the members. So grab your membership so you can join us. And next Saturday, we have our next member stream. But thank you, Great Light. God bless you. This is great. This is how we keep going. This is how we keep the lights on. This is how we get everybody in our home. Thank you so much. Now, what Tom was saying is exactly right. Wow, I'm still blown away. 50 members. That's the first one. They've been writing articles in the New York Times about Coppola. And Tom just hinted at it where they were saying he was a pain in the ass on the set. He was smoking dope in his trailer. He wouldn't set up the shots. He wouldn't tell anybody what was coming. I'm like, it's Francis Ford Coppola. And yesterday I was talking to Robert Meyer Burnett, and he told me something I was stunned by. So anybody wants to jump in on this, tell me. So Robert, I was saying, why don't they look for more Coppolas? He's like, dude, it's simple. Half the people in Hollywood today making movies or greenlighting them have never seen The Godfather or Apocalypse Now or The Outsiders. They have no idea.
Yep.
And I was stunned by that.
And that's what Tarantino and Scorsese were trying to say when a bunch of people piled on him. if you actually, especially Tarantino, he laid it out a little bit better. He was
Okay.
saying, like, look, you have an entire generation of kids who have grown up on nothing but Marvel movies, Harry Potter movies, nothing but IP driven stuff. He said they wouldn't even know what to do with a movie like Taxi Driver. Right now, you put Joker in it, then they understand it. But he even said, like, they wouldn't even know what to do with one of my movies nowadays. He's like, these kids probably wouldn't even understand how to even watch it in so many words. Like, and he's right. They don't, you would not be able to get a kid to sit down and watch a movie like The Godfather now without them getting fidgety and being like, well, when is the superhero coming in? You know, like, or something like that. You know what I mean? Because they've never been to movies like that. Movies stopped happening with superhero stuff. And I've been saying this for the last few weeks, especially, but I've been saying it for a while more so. But like, there was this McDonaldization happening before the woke thing, and then the woke thing happened. But it all goes back to superhero movies and how they've kind of destroyed cinema. The studios got so obsessed with finding the next Avengers that they forgot how to make regular movies.
But it bugs me. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You're on a roll. It bugs me. Doesn't it bug anybody? It's like in every industry that you're in, whatever you work, Gothix, before you got on YouTube, could you imagine being in an industry where you didn't know any of its history?
I mean, that's kind of how I was though. Like I was running on default mode.
But you learn though, you embrace these. I'm learning that a lot of these people, they reject it. They don't embrace it at all.
Because it's uncomfortable. People don't. I mean, just look at the nature of content creation. Some of the most viral videos are just short form content with a lot of flashy images and pictures. People don't want to think, and those types of cinematic movies that forces you to think. But if you see someone in a superhero costume, that's easy. It's comfortable. You don't, you get your enjoyment out of it, which I don't mind. But it's like this generation of people, they don't know how to sit there and actually take in art unless it's just like so like in your face. It's very flashy.
But isn't it cutting us from our history, Platoon? In one way, Hollywood.
It is, yeah. I mean, and I'm all for criticizing audiences who really should be demanding better, because if the audience starts demanding better, then eventually they might get given something better. You can't really complain if you go and sit down and mong out to Godzilla X Kong, for example, and then turn around and say, oh, but why are all the movies cheap and bad and rubbish with just nothing but superheroes and popcorn? It's like, well, you're telling them that that's what you're happy with, so what do you expect? But on the other side of things, though, because I don't think the audience deserves all of the blame for this, what we are seeing, well, we're coming off the top now end of a period of almost not unprecedented, but extraordinary studio power and control. That's one of the main things that the superhero genre has done. We went through a period of about 10 years where studios, principally Disney and Marvel, could actually guarantee that they were going to make $1 billion on any release that came out. That's not usual. It never has been usual. They go through these periods of rising and falling studio power and accountability. And a lot of the directors we're looking at and talking about now, people like Scorsese, people like Coppola, Tarantino, you can also look at, say, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas even. They all came out at a period in time when the studio systems were incredibly weak by comparison, because they'd gone through the huge explosive boom of westerns and action films, and then they ran out of steam and they were losing lots and lots of money. And at that point, they had no choice really but to turn to more visionary wildcard directors to say, look, we're desperate. Give us something new, which is great. We will give you a lot of creative freedom because we evidently don't know what we're doing. And that allowed them the freedom to go and make these great films that they made. But at the moment, we're not in that situation. At the moment, we're in a situation where the studios have got so rich off of one or two properties. The studios then want to maintain their position by exercising more and more control over the kinds of people they let in. And so you're not going to get another Coppola. You're not going to get another Tarantino because they are not controllable in that way. And until the studios start losing even more money and losing even more power and get taken back down to that position just before the Hollywood Renaissance that brought so many of these great directors to the fore, I don't think we will see much of an improvement. We have to wait for them to suffer more losses before we're going to turn this around.
But no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, but what the hell are they smoking? That's basically what the fuck are they smoking in Hollywood, where they don't know how to hire someone like that? They don't want to.
That's the problem. Instead of smoking, they should go back to snorting cocaine.
Go back to it. Go back to doing the drugs.
No, because Platoon is right. Because what we haven't had now for the last generation is a new set of voices come in and say, this is our thing. This is what we got. Check it out. And what he's talking about is when all the moguls were dying out and they sold all the studios off, And a lot of these guys were like Seagrams and Gulf and Western and stuff. They didn't know how to make movies. So just like, we don't know what we're doing. So that's how we got The Godfather, right? That single-handedly pretty much saved Paramount, right? Same thing with Exorcist over at Warner Brothers. Same thing with Planet of the Apes over at Fox. And then you had like, they also add in there Easy Rider, which ushered in like, oh my God, there's these kids that can make a movie for a couple $100,000.
What about Outsiders?
Well, that's way down the line, but I mean, you had this whole group of people come in with Francis Ford Coppola that Platoon was just talking about, like George Lucas and Martin Scorsese and Brian De Palma and all these guys that came up the ranks through they were known as the USC Mafia at the time because they were basically the equivalent of the Brat Pack, but it was just a bunch of young and up and coming fresh directors who had all kinds of new ideas. And Spielberg was the youngest of the bunch, and he almost single-handedly changed the entire, landscape for Hollywood, right? Like he showed that you could come in with these high concept ideas and audience would flock to them. I mean, but it started with Jaws and it just kept going and going and going from there. And then you added, George Lucas in with his, Star Wars and like, look what I can do. And that's kind of what it became. Like these guys were like trying to one up each other. And we got the benefit of that.
Right, of course.
But now it's just like, a guy like Spielberg or Francis Ford Coppola or even Tarantino walks into most studios. Tarantino may be one of the last exceptions because he's in that last generation of up and coming guys. There was one generation after him. But since then, it's like they closed those doors off. You can't get in now because we don't get any more. Because that next generation after Spielberg and all those guys was like, Cronenberg and what's his face, Lynch and stuff like that. And then you had, Tarantino and Kevin Smith and Robert Rodriguez and all those guys come in the generation after that. And since then, the closest we had was like the Eli Roth generation and stuff. And those guys weren't even all that great. And since then, things have been cut off, right? Like you have not had this new fresh crop of young voices come in. It's who they pick and choose, like Lil Platoon was just saying. And those are the people like Chloe Zhao and whoever else who shouldn't even be making these kind of movies, right? See, and that's like the bigger problem. Yeah.
So I'm just closing the window. What's that?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, Tom, that they used to try to one up each other, this really talented directors, whereas now you have Kathleen Kennedy basically going, hey, Kevin, I lost $300 million on Indiana Jones. Can you top that?
Right?
Like,
yeah, that's the new can you top it game. Can you lose more money at this point?
And,
right?
And also, like when you look at like Marvel, for example, when you really think about it, who is the real director of those movies? It's Kevin Feige. It's the Marvel
It is now, yeah. It wasn't
think about
so.
it. When they made Ant-Man, it was originally supposed to be Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
And he probably wanted creative control on it, and they're like, no, has to be a Marvel movie.
Well, they said they came to the conclusion that they clearly weren't going to see eye to eye on this project.
Yeah,
whether
same thing with Scott Derrickson. Is that the guy who did Doctor Strange? You want to do part 2? Same thing.
During phase 2, when that movie was made, that was the right call that Edgar Wright not get to make it, because he was still making a phase 1 movie that wouldn't fit with where the MCU was at the time, and that was the right call. Problem was that at that time, it wasn't just Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige is the one that we all saw, so we all thought that he was the architect and the mastermind behind the MCU, which he wasn't. He was just one wheel in a cog. He's the reason why all of those movies need millions upon millions and millions of dollars of reshoots. That's on Kevin Feige. That's his contribution. But for why the MCU was there and was so good, he was one cog in that machine, but not the most vital part. And the moment the most vital parts disappeared, because he wanted to get them gone, then nothing has really worked since then, because he alone, he can't manage this.
Yeah, and what I was
an operation.
And what I was getting to before to kind of wrap this all up into a nice bow is that they killed the movie star in the process of this.
Yeah.
And that's what it used to be to drive studios. Because the best part about a movie star is you can, if they're a couple movies in a row don't work, you just don't pay them anymore. You stop putting them in movies, or they get desperate enough where they'll do stuff for less. When you're looking at superhero movies, guess what? They don't cost less. And to make the next one that much bigger and better than the last one, you got to spend more money. So now they put themselves in a position where they can't, move to a different superhero. It doesn't work that way. They've kind of killed that whole thing. So, it used to be with, movie stars, sure. Schwarzenegger and Stallone, probably biggest action stars of the 80s, Eddie Murphy and Harrison Ford, probably the biggest movie stars of the 80s. After a while, they were demanding huge salaries, sure, but they were worth it. And once they didn't make movies that were worth it anymore, like Harrison Ford, his star started to fade in the 90s there. So he started popping up less and less and less. But now it's getting to a point you don't have a Harrison Ford movie. You don't have an Eddie Murphy movie. You don't have the movie you're going to see now. It's the franchise or the IP. Yeah. Well, even Tom Cruise is not even, like I said, Mission Impossible kind of proves that he's the pudding. The magic in the pudding wasn't Tom Cruise. It was the fact that we got a Top Gun movie at the right time, at the right place. And it was the sequel to a movie that was one of the biggest movies of the 80s that never got 12 other sequels.
Right. That's a good point. Let's take a real quick super chat break because we have some questions and we'll get right back to this. Mexican Iron Man, let's bring him up. God, I love this conversation. Okay, let's get first. Mexican Iron Man, we got a break. Kenneth Dowling for $10. Hello, gentlemen and lady. Caught you guys on YouTube, so I'm saying hi. To George, thanks for playing that clip from Coppola's movie. I want to hear diversity of opinions, not just racial diversity. Exactly.
Sorry, my dogs are barking.
It's okay. I got it. I got a dog. He's downstairs. I got a bagel. Love him. Oh, God, let me tell you this. Yesterday, he found a turtle. I like turtles. He went ape shit. He thought he had, I don't know, discovered like the treasure of the Sierra Madre, but he was circling the damn thing.
Dad, it's like a ball, but it's alive.
And I had to like get in between him and the turtle because it's like, look, I got a turtle. I'm like, leave it alone. It was a snapping turtle. And because we've had
you don't want him getting a snapping turtle. That would have been bad.
No. But he went nuts. We've had storms for the last few days and power's been out. Finally back. Mr. Buttcrack Media, member for 4 months. Love you, Mr. Buttcrack Media. Hail George in the panel and to all in the chat. Hail to you, my friend. Always great to see you here. A great support of ours. Scott McKenzie, member for 4 months. I can't believe it's been 4 months. Four. I like that. Greetings, George panel and chat. Ryan for 20. Is that euros or pounds? Euros. 20 euros. No, yeah. I can't help but think that if Amazon wasn't under contract to complete this Lord of the Rings dumpster fire, they would have canceled it. At this point, isn't it an albatross around their necks? Oh, we are going to be talking about Rings of Power here in the next segment. Let me tell you, I view like Rings of Power or now Wigs of Power, kind of like Jeff Bezos' midlife crisis. Because if you notice, as soon as he started shooting Rings of Power, he dumped his wife, got this ho-ho from Mexico, redid his whole outlook, dresses like a 15-year-old, bought the Ferrari, and you get Rings of Recycled Fantasy.
So you're saying that Rings of Power is part of a midlife crisis, George?
Absolutely. I believe it's Jeff Bezos' midlife crisis. 1,000%, because there's no other explanation for it. I mean, if you do something that you get so humiliated on the global stage, I've talked to a couple of people from there, shall remain anonymous. They can buy out their contract. They don't want to buy out. To Bezos, he's given 7 different speeches on it that have been public. It is a matter of pride that he finishes it. This is all about ego, nothing else. They're going to lose their ass. 37% of the audience for season 1 only watched from the premiere to the finale. Robert Meyer Burnett is here. Hello, my friend.
Hello.
Can you hear us, Robert? Robert? We can do sign language. No? Maybe we should get one of those little people on the side. Eric K, member for 4 months. Do they all identify as white Karen women, though? Who knows? Probably. It's just the fact that they're trying to lecture us. At least the diversity team should have some quote unquote, I don't know, diversity. I mean, it just shows their hypocrisy.
That was quite astonishing because I'd not seen that picture before. If you'd given me so if you told me that was a joke, I would have believed it. But for a team who's very obsessed with diversity, that is a lot of white women. That's a huge number.
It is.
But that is diversity. Remember, diversity only means non-white, non-male, non-straight.
But they were all white.
If you go away from that, it's diverse. So if you have all white females, that's diverse.
Wait a minit. You just said if they're all, but they were all white.
But
as long as it's female, it counts as diverse.
Or female identifying. Don't forget that.
Okay, because we got to talk about that in a second because of the X-Men 97 producer. The Blue Dot for $5. George, how about the DEI official convicted of stealing $5 million from Facebook and Nike? Yeah, that person, he was like having phony vendors and pumping out like false tickets, but you don't see it getting a lot of news. I'm glad, Blue Dot, you brought that up because everybody should know about it.
Robert can't hear us.
Can you hear us, Robert?
I'm sorry, guys. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't.
We can hear you just fine, Robert Meyer Burnett. Can you hear us?
We can hear you. Again,
He can't hear us though.
Brown Lives Matter. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Mike, you might want to tell him to check his audio settings
Wait a
first.
minute. Yeah, wait a minute, Mike. I thought you were white now.
You're white adjacent.
You know what? You have super chats to read. Let's go. Moving along.
Magnum Norris for $10. Gothix, do you ever sleep?
Nope.
Because she's the best. I love Gothix. Magnum Norris for $10. Well, we already did that one. Let's go to the next one. Graph Web for $2. For the love of God, cancel Disney Plus. I agree with you. I think they're doing it to themselves. Graph Web.
Well,
they're canceling it. Come on with the.
I'm not even going to get into it. I sent something to Andre earlier that kind of bounces off that, but that'll send us down a whole new rabbit.
Oh, we're going to get into Disney here in a minute. Yvonne Hancock became a YouTube member.
Rebel level.
Hell yeah. Thank you for joining, Yvonne. Member stream next Saturday and wait till after the show. And then Greek Light gifted 50 George the Giant Slayer memberships. I need one of those buttons like Gary has where they like.
That's what I'm here for. That's all you got to do.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Greek Light. Darth Racer 777 for $20. Coppola's neo-right, maybe fascist comment, is typical of the left. Fascism was developed by the left. When you have big tech and big government in lockstep, that's a form of fascism.
Well,
what?
You know what was funny about that? Listen to what he's saying though, because Coppola is like an old school lefty, right?
I view him as a classic liberal.
He said Trump is not in power right now. Remember, he corrected that individual, which is funny because notice how most people with TDS and all that stuff in the left right now, they freak out no matter what. It's like, you got to remind them, he ain't even been in control for the last 4 years. He pointed that out, but then he said that we are headed towards a neo-right, maybe fascist, that whole thing. So to me, I thought he was kind of saying like, we are headed that way regardless of Trump, is what I took from what he was saying. I could be wrong. And I thought that's why he brought John in, because John being known to be a Trump supporter, he was kind of giving him the floor as somebody from the right to say his piece on it, and I thought he handled it pretty well. And from what I heard, they cut him off at part of the point where he was talking a little bit too, but I get it, that's the first time I've seen the whole video there either. So I think whoever posted it, they cut off.
They
what,
did.
He was saying, yeah.
I found the AP version of it, but it wouldn't load for some reason because Voight goes on for a while. The reason I brought that up was because I think this points to one of the reasons why Hollywood is trying to cancel Coppola. He works outside of the studio system, but I think it's brave of him. I mean, he has a different set of beliefs. I mean, look at all of us here. We don't agree on everything. We're not supposed to agree on everything with each other. We get along, we have a good time, we have our conversation, we share it with people. That's the way the world is supposed to work. Not going to be like, oh, you don't agree with me 100% on this thing? Well, then hell with you, you're my enemy. No. Thank you, Darth Racer 777 for that $20. We got Magna Defender 98 for $5. Iger's go-to excuse is a 4-year-old cold. I'm sorry, but most people are back to normal. The only people who still care about it are the Twitter losers. 100%.
Yep.
Can you hear us, Robert?
I can. I apologize.
Of course. He's got to come in here because he's got a better shirt than I got. That's why.
Laser disc. I still got my laser disc player. Happy birthday to Robert Meyer Burnett, everybody.
Happy
thank
birthday.
You. Thank you. By the way, it's an honor to be on with Gothix. I've been watching you for quite some time.
Well, hey, thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Aside from the fact that I'd come over from another stream and the audio wasn't working, so I apologize for being rude.
You're good.
So
good. Skis Spivak Esquire gifted 10 George the Giant Slayer membership. Skis, you're brilliant. Thank you, my friend. Way to go. Man, we're going to have a lot of people in the after show. And next Saturday, Olaf, member for 4 months, another great panel of guests. Good to see them here. It's good to see you all, and it is great to have them here. Love everyone. Kenneth Dowling for $10. Tom, I completely agree with you on what Tarantino said. I love superhero movies, but I also love Scorsese, Tarantino, Sidney Lumet, Coppola, Spielberg, saw Jaws, and Raiders, all-time greats. There you go,
Yeah,
Tom.
and he's even a fan of a lot of that stuff too, and I think he even said that in his quote, but people just completely overlooked that. But yeah.
I think Tarantino is one of the last. I just don't know, unless somebody here on the panel knows, who's the next Tarantino or Spielberg or Coppola.
Nolan is the closest.
No.
Who
What do you
is?
think, Robert?
No.
Well, I think the real problem is movies just don't inspire the younger generation the way they. I mean, I've often said movies are the art form of the 20th century, but where are we? You've got kids today. Entertainment has changed where people now are their own protagonists. That's why video games are so. You're playing the game. You're the hero.
The TikTok generation, yeah.
To watch movies is to look outside yourself, and you're watching other people, the protagonists in films, and you're getting something from stories. Now everybody wants to see themselves in stories. They want to see them, which is odd to me, because the whole point of storytelling, I think, is to comment on our shared human experience. It's to illuminate or discuss things that we're all a part of. And that isn't happening anymore. Now it's all what my truth is, or which is bizarre to me. Everybody, what is it? What do they call it? Something protagonist syndrome. Central.
Yeah, where everybody's the star in their own movie, basically.
Yeah,
yes.
and I find that odd, because the whole point is it's not about your experience; it's about our collective experience. And how can we find common ground to discuss what it means to be human? If it's all me, my truth, my truth, my truth. Well, how am I supposed to know what your truth is? I don't even know you. And you're going to yell at me because I'm not treating you the way you want to be treated? That's bizarre. And storytelling used to be about finding those shared stories work because, and they've worked throughout the centuries, because we all can recognize, no matter what our backgrounds are, no matter what our economic status is, our sexual status is, our political status, the great stories have our common ground that we can all recognize as being truthful, whether it's a novel or a movie or a song.
Absolutely.
And that's what I thought. And now we're all so bifurcated. And that doesn't mean, like, I always go back to, like, when Spike Lee was starting out, one of the great indie voices of the mid to late 80s. He was selling shoes, and he made She's Gotta Have It. Well, I live in Seattle. I don't know what it's like to be a black woman in Brooklyn who's dating multiple dudes. But I knew when I saw that movie for the first time, I was seeing a brand new cinematic voice. And I really liked that movie. And his third movie was Do the Right Thing, which is one of the classic American films of that indie period. Where are those new directors? Where's the new Soderbergh? It came around the same time. Where is the new Spike Lee?
Cronenberg.
I mean, Cronenberg's 80.
Where's Man?
Well,
Right.
Cronenberg has his son, I guess.
His daughter. His daughter has a new movie out that just came out called Humane.
I loved She's Gotta Have It. Great. It was in black and white, if I remember.
Yeah, it was.
Great sex scenes when I saw it when I was 15.
But I mean,
that was a movie.
But that's the thing. I mean, these were people that were passionate about filmmaking and passionate about cinema, and they charted their own path. And also, it was a different time when you can get distribution for those movies, and all of that has sort of been swept away, which is unfortunate.
It's sort of self-fulfilling though, right? Because I agree with you, like, it's one of the things that are dragging movies down is this inability to speak to common experience. But I think that's largely because movies don't try, which is the problem. Like, even as recently as, is it 2019, Avengers Endgame comes out, everyone watches it. It's not a brilliant film, technically speaking, but it's really popular. Everyone enjoyed it. Everyone came together to watch it. It was still telling common stories for a common experience. It was still paying off a huge thing that was one of the most, shared and mutually enjoyed properties of the last decade. It's still possible to do that, but at some point since 2019, what you've had is, I think, quite a lot of film studios are taking what you've just said, but misreading it completely and saying, well, we have to now start speaking in a different way to the new generation because the new generation doesn't understand what common experience is. And that's when you get everything from, I was watching Doctor Who yesterday. Like, what is the common experience about debating the pronouns of a Furby, for example? Like, this is not a common storytelling experience, is it? This is you trying to uplift marginalized voices, which is something that Russell T Davies is very keen on doing. is very much setting yourself against the idea that you're telling common stories with common experiences and common value sets, which people of any background can enjoy. The more film studios, I think, try to pander to that particular generation's specificity, the more they will make themselves redundant. Whereas if they actually did get back to telling the universal stories, movies would have just as much explanatory power as they ever have, I think. I don't think they're doomed as an art form by any means.
Yeah, but where did that? Do you think Avengers Endgame possibly was kind of like as big a success as it was? Did it also signify like a death knell to films, to true films, to storytelling?
For several reasons, because personally, there's two sides to Avengers Endgame. One, it was the biggest hit to date, but also it had in it the seeds of destruction, both for Marvel and for cinema as a whole, because Tom, he eruditely explained earlier in the stream exactly how damaging comic book movies have been to cinema, not directly, but indirectly through a generation of moviegoers that now have grown up with only superhero movies in theaters, because that's the movies that they chose to see. And so that's what they gravitate towards as viewers, but also greenlighting executives. This is what they know. They don't even know what to do with quote unquote real movies anymore. And Endgame, that kind of like marked the trend for when Marvel and comic book movies were these super reliable things, because the quality would no longer be there afterwards. It was the last movie that had any kind of semblance of proper quality control, because it had the Russos in the helm of making it.
Yep.
They weren't there afterwards. But what was there were all of the various, I'm going to call it that, DEI hires that would dominate Marvel going forward. And all of those storylines were set up in that movie. It was just disaster after disaster that set us onto the path where we are right now, where the comic book movie genre that had artificially upheld both itself and downtrod anything else could no longer sustain itself. And then kind of the whole thing collapsed. So the title, which does come from an Avengers comic, was still unintentionally, I don't know, prophetic in a sense, I guess.
Well, yeah, it was. You said a DEI. Don't expect intelligence, just check boxes. That's what we got. Okay, so we answered Kenneth Dowling. Mexican Arm, we'll go to the next one. Jim Alaska is back. My good friend. Gifted 20 Georgia Giants memberships. Thank you, Jim. I hope everything is going well with you and yours. Can't wait to see you in the member stream next Saturday. And we got Andrew Honeycutt for $5. Is the era of the auteur over? Are there too many chefs in the kitchen? Scorsese, etc. Who will pick up the flag? Cheers to the panel. That's a great one. Who is going to pick it up?
I'm curious what everybody thinks, but I think the biggest problem we have now is it's the easiest it's ever been to make a movie or a project and to get it out there, but you get buried in just so much stuff that is out there. And unless you have the kind of money the studios have to advertise your thing and get people to know about it, you just kind of get lost in the shuffle. I know, Robert, you've done some smaller films and stuff like that too, so you kind of know how this works more so than anybody probably on the panel.
Yeah, I mean, we have a movie coming out now. You know, I'm a film I produced. We're selling it at the Cannes Film Market as we speak, called White Devils, and it was written by a South African playwright, and it falls into the horror genre, but it's also about the legacy of oppression and
okay. It's not a DEI movie.
No.
White Devil. Wow, okay.
But no, but it, you know, it covers, I think, certain ground that people will be able to recognize. But I think the real problem is too, like Tom was saying, there's so much stuff out there now, but the studios themselves, what happened was the business changed, and the business is now global. So a global marketplace will only accept certain kinds of stories. Like, for instance, the comedies that used to dominate in the 80s don't, because comedy is colloquial. You know, it's hard to have comedy travel from one country to another. So when you're investing, and movies became so much more expensive to make. I mean, studios used to make, as I said, historical dramas, thrillers, erotic thrillers, comedies, science fiction, horror, and the movies weren't that expensive. You know, I think back to movies I still love, like Paul Newman in The Verdict. one man seeking out
Great
one
film.
last chance for
Oh, yeah.
redemption. It's a quiet. That movie would be turned into a 10-episode streaming series today.
What about Chinatown?
Another one of my favorite movies of all time.
Or actually, I don't even know if they'd even make The Verdict now.
No,
but they wouldn't, because they're going to ask who's going to go see
Well,
that
I mean,
movie.
not even as a series. I mean, it's just because that was a conversation we had the other day. Actually, Robert, I think you might find interesting is like we kind of took note of Hollywood used to just dive into novels and stuff. Like almost every movie you'd see was based on a book, right, or whatever. Nowadays, they don't even do that anymore because everything's unless it's based on a comic book or a young adult novel like Harry Potter. Like they don't even get into that kind of stuff anymore. And that's why I think a movie like The Verdict wouldn't even get made now. And Rain Man's another one I brought up as an example too, especially not with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman on a big scale budget like it was for MGM.
Well, no, you'd have to actually have someone who was either autistic or, remember, according to their,
too.
They wouldn't let what was Scarlett Johansson. Remember, she was supposed to play the trans character, and the film was greenlit and it was ready to go. And then was it 3 years ago? And then they said, "Wait a minute, you're not trans. You can't play it." She's like, "I'm an actress." Yeah.
Well, like I brought up, Philadelphia. You had Philadelphia, which was coming on the heels of the AIDS epidemic, and you have Denzel Washington and you have Tom Hanks in a movie where Denzel Washington was us, the everyman, who meets a man who's dying of AIDS and has to defend him. And so a movie that shows truth, we all identified with Denzel Washington. There's a great moment where he's going to shake his hand and then he's done it. And he's like, "What have I done?" Great performance. But then Tom Hanks, because he was so sympathetic, I think more people responded to Philadelphia. More people garnered sympathy, especially for the male gay population of America that was being decimated by the AIDS epidemic.
Well,
that movie single-handedly,
stuff. Yeah.
Well, with Tom Hanks playing that role, we all became more sympathetic, and Bruce Springsteen doing the title track. Suddenly it was like, okay, let's re-examine this. And suddenly gay men were not just gay men, they were people.
Well, that's back when Hollywood would do that. Yeah.
And if Scarlett Johansson played a trans person, how many more people would have gained sympathy or understanding of the plight of trans people because they can watch Scarlett Johansson? The idea that somebody has to be what they're playing is ridiculous. That goes counterproductive to what acting is. You're supposed to be playing something that you're not.
Well, that goes against even like voice acting, right? Look at X-Men 97. The lady who used to play Jubilee was a white woman. And then they're like, "Oh, you're not Asian, so you can't play Jubilee." And then the reboot.
Well, and what pisses me off about
that,
what pisses me off about that thing with the voice acting is that they're ignoring the fact that they're going off of this idea that, oh, people were just racist back then. That's why. It's like, no, you don't realize that the way these shows were budgeted and scaled and contracts were made, they were only allowed like 4 to 5 voice artists per show. So a lot of times you had to spread out the work. That's why you had white people doing black people's voices and sometimes black people doing white people's voices.
But we also had marketing. I didn't mean to cut you off. We had marketing and census. They used to make a lot of the shows based on the census breakdowns. They're like, okay, we have 72% of this and 15% of this. We're going to go.
Robert's right. Philadelphia actually brought more awareness to AIDS than anything else prior to that.
Absolutely. And then you had Angels in America.
And gave it a human face.
Yes.
Watching that movie, we were all Denzel Washington. And I identified, not just because I love Denzel Washington, but the way he played that part, we could all understand. He was our doorway. Everybody, male, female, young, old, that character that he was playing was our doorway into the story. And with his growing sympathy to Tom Hanks' plight, we, the audience, gained sympathy to Tom Hanks' plight.
And that's what I was griping.
That's what movies would do. That was the power of cinema.
Well, that's why I griped about Sound of Freedom, because I said that's the kind of movie Hollywood used to make and get all the Oscars.
A long time
now they're
ago.
rejecting it. Yep. And like that tells you what everything is wrong with Hollywood right now.
I couldn't agree more. Joe Egger for $20. Every generation starts out as little narcissistic shits. Gen Z is different only in how much older generations are pandering to them. Interesting. What do you think about that, Gothix? About the generational divide? The difference?
I don't know. I think every generation has its own problem. As far as like everyone's starting off, every generation starts off as narcissistic. I mean, I guess in general, maybe there is some truth to that, where people are always self-centered. It's all about me, 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 me. So maybe, yeah, I partially agree with it.
Do you think, though, there's any difference between this? I don't know what to call it. Is it Generation Alpha is the new one? Is it Generation
that's the
Alpha?
new one, yeah.
Is that the one who's like gone full wokey?
Yes.
So, I mean, like, do you think there's some difference? Because I don't remember looking back and seeing hippies going this insane. I mean, you protest stuff like that, but it seems like this is
You
gone.
gotta think about it too. When you had hippies, they didn't have access to things like social media and stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
It might have been similar.
Social media.
I
though,
think
is
it depends. Based on, I think each generation was crazy in its own way for each individual generation. Like for them, there were probably people looking at the hippies like, oh, these people are nuts. But us, it's like, that's like when people say, oh, let's go back to the 90s. The 90s were cool based on our perspective, but I remember being in the 90s and older people saying this generation is screwed. So
really?
Yeah,
Well,
it
we had
depends.
a lot of the PC problems then. That was the thing I try to remind people. And the same thing with hippies. It's like, yeah, there was a good portion of them who tried to do good shit, but there was a lot of them who were just stinky fucking hippies who did bad things like the Chaz does now. Like, people forget about this stuff. It's like there's the good and the bad of both of it. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that there's a difference in the way that political society treats young people today. Back when you had the hippies, you had the artistic and cultural establishment were probably broadly on side with the hippies, or at least with the slightly more like well-dressed versions of them. But they were very much against most of the political organizations and institutions of that day. They weren't fated by Ronald Reagan, for example, in the 1980s, and they weren't fated by any Republican president or even many Democrat presidents preceding him in the 1960s either. Whereas the difference now is that when you have someone like Greta Thunberg who comes out, and she's just a deeply uneducated, mentally unwell child who doesn't know anything about anything, and she's not been educated because she left school to strike about something she doesn't understand because her parents told her it was a good idea. What happens to her? She gets taken to the White House. I think that's the difference. We are slightly, well, massively even, more keen to elevate the voices of young people because young people are idiots and they are radical, and there are idiot radical people in charge, and so they find young people very useful. That we still hear periodically calls to lower the voting age in response to young people. I look around at people of my own age, and I was born in the 90s, and I think, no, we ourselves are a pretty good argument for raising the voting age, actually. Why is that not the conversation we're having? Why are we pandering to all these morons? But pandering is what we do. So I would agree broadly that every child is a narcissistic little sociopath. It's just that now we seem to think that they also have this enlightened, pure worldview as well.
Yeah, I don't think
Greta Thunberg is now legally an adult, so we can point out that she's no longer a child. She's a mentally disturbed young woman.
Yeah, we can be mean about her now because she's over 18. It's allowed. We can be as mean as we want to be.
She's open game, but that's the thing. We've never pandered to children. I mean, whoever thought we would listen to a child about how to govern society? I mean, I could imagine telling my mom, I know everything in the world. You must listen to me. She'd have been like, let me get my house shoe.
The reason for that is because a lot of those people that are in power right now are a lot of the ex-hippies.
Yes.
So they think that the kids know everything because they thought they knew everything when they were kids, just because they were right about 2 or 3 things. That's
it's
about
also
it.
Very convenient that, they listened to her to say that they had to do the stuff they were going to do anyway. So, let's not forget about that. Very, very good at putting out to the public to kind of like whitewash what they were going to do no matter what.
Thank you, Olaf, for that. You know what I was going to say, though? What's interesting, too, is I think people mean well, but what I don't understand about today is why does everybody feel they're supposed to be comfortable and feel good all the time? Life is an ongoing, terrible struggle. And the idea that everybody wants life, human beings are a terrible group of people. We're not a good bunch, and we've always strived to be better. But why is it that we have a generation of people that they expect to be comfortable all the time? Like when they my father told me when I walked outside our front door that I should expect to get punched in the face. Right. That life is not easy, and there's no one out there that's going to help you. Don't expect, you've got to forge relationships with people that are blood and fire, and learn how you can trust and be the right kind of person, but don't dare expect the world to give you something. You have to go out and make your own bones and make it work for you. And now I feel that everybody expects that the world outside is going to be exactly the way they want it to be. And I find it odd. I find that it's such a strange idea that everybody has their own truth. And then when they go out into the world, they expect the rest of the world to know what they want, which is absurd to me. It's like an inversion, a complete cultural inversion of what life is.
Give me reality. It is.
Well,
it's an inversion of reality.
I mean, I don't understand it. When I was growing up, nobody expected me to know what was going on inside their head. Like, you know, if somebody was, say, identified as a different gender, how they wouldn't expect you to know that. How would you know that? If you're meeting somebody for the first time, how would you know? You know, you can only assume things about people, and it was understood that people are assuming things. And so if you said something to somebody that was incorrect, they'd be like, hey man, you know what? That's not, I'm actually this way. Instead of going on TikTok and making crying videos about how you've been misgendered. I mean, it's a bizarre world that we're living in where everybody expects the world to cater to them. Where I grew up in a world that was exactly the opposite.
It's what happens though, isn't it, when you delay adolescence? Because you're talking about going out into the world and learning what the world really is, but that happens later and later and later and later. So what most of these people are, even though they are technically and legally speaking adults, they aren't really, because they've never really left the cloisters of home. They're behaving like children because that's the incentive structure that's been erected around them. Children, if you upset them and if they feel unsafe or they're hurt in some way, will cry and scream. That's what we expect children to do. But now it's gone from you go out to work at 16 and like maybe 10% of you go to university, and then you go out to work and then it's going to be, you know, you will make of yourself what you will. It's now you stay in school till you're 18, you go to university on somebody else's dime until you're 22 maybe. But also if you claim mental health as a reason for delaying your essays, you can stay until you're 23, 24, 25. You can also get a loan to do a master's if you like. So that's other people's money keeping you in education until you're 26, 27, 28. And now there's also PhD loans if you want to stay there even longer, so other people's money can fund you into your 30s. And then by the time your personality is basically formed, you go out into the world in your 30s, having been brought up for 3 decades, believing that everyone takes care of you. And so, of course, you're completely unprepared when you go out into the real world and find that that's not how most people actually think and operate. But if you want people to grow up, you actually have to give them a chance to grow up, and you can't keep coddling them for this long. It's an unusual thing in human history to do that.
Yeah, and as a parent, I mean, Platoon's right now. I don't want to drag this out any deeper, but no, it's a generational thing that comes with the parenting because, like, you know, like Robert was saying, like we were raised in a certain way to where you acted a certain way in public or you expected to get your ass beat when you got home, right? Like now it's the other way around. It's like everybody coddles their children in public to the point where, I mean, I've even gotten you even say anything to anybody about how they're parenting their kid, they freak the fuck out on you. When it's like, normally sometimes it's just like, are you going to make your kid behave? Because like when I was working at the video store, this is a story I told before, I'll keep it real quick. There was this kid just running around the store, knocking all the covers off the shelves. And I'm like, are you going to have them pick them up? And they're like, no, isn't that your job? I'm like, no, I don't get paid to clean up after your kid and parent for you. And she got all uppity with me and I just kicked her out. Cause I'm like, you're not, she's like, well, I was going to rent these. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, not if you're not going to clean up after your kid. Cause it's like ridiculous. And to me, I think it's a parenting problem. And it comes with the participation generation, you know, where they got the participation award for everything. It's like there's no competition whatsoever left in it. And yeah, it comes back down to parenting at the end of the day. And we've gotten afraid of parenting our kids too. On top of it, also, it's not all the parents' fault in that respect because, you know, you're afraid of doing anything because your kid will go out and say, oh, they're abusing me and this, that, and the other. But like, I don't want to drag it down that road. But
yeah, no. Let's just finish.
Super chat cop is back.
Yeah, let me just finish.
I saw Mike pop in here. That's his cue to say shut up.
Thank you that we're reading super chats again.
Yeah.
George,
Accident seller for 50 Norwegian krona. Bezos' son gave his dad one job. Don't F it up. Jeff effed it up. His son must be so pissed and embarrassed he should wear a wig and change his name. He's talking about the Rings of Power, and absolutely, even though he was reading that story when he gave that speech off his phone. So I don't know how much I believe Bezos there. Bredicus for $2. Happy birthday, Robert Meyer Burnett. You got another one.
It's never going to end.
Never. Martino Simone for 50 Swiss francs. Hello, Martino. I hope
that was the
everything's
highlight of my
good.
birthday.
Hell yeah, Martino is a
Actually,
gentleman.
meeting him, came to my house, meeting Martino.
And then y'all streamed together.
Yeah, we did a little bit. That was
Beautiful.
fun.
Olaf for €2. A little appreciation of the producer, non-YouTuber. Yes, that's for Mexican Iron Man. Olaf loves you. Mexican Iron Man gifted 5 Georgia Giants. Thank you, my producer. Let's get a clap one too. That's always good. Borg Porg for $5. Anyone seen in living color parody of Philadelphia called San Francisco? RuPaul is the lawyer and Jim Carrey is just a normal straight guy.
That's hilarious.
I don't remember it, but I'm sure I did.
Accident. Oh, I got to take a look at it. Accident seller for 20 Norwegian krona. Endymion, love your content and calm voice on YouTube. 100%.
Thank you. It's actually weird how many comments I get of people who say they fall asleep to my videos. I don't know if that's a compliment that my videos are boring or if it's just, yeah, there you go. See, there you go. Now someone's asleep on the panel. But thank you.
No, that's great. And which is that it? Mexican Iron Man?
On with the show, good sir.
Wonderful. So now we have, okay, so X-Men, Disney's, well, Marvel X-Men 97, the animated series just wrapped up its first season. And before the season came out, they had fired the showrunner, Bo DeMaio. Supposedly it was because he had an OnlyFans page, blah, blah, blah. But what I have been listening to and found a couple of, I don't know if you want to call them rumors. I guess they're more rumors than reports, is the fact that he was fired because of the fact he wanted to honor the canon of the comics. And I watched it. But before I ever watched it, I had like completely crapped on it. I said, this is not going to be any good. He had given an interview to some YouTubers where he was explaining how he had introduced himself to Kevin Feige and how he wanted his personality, his identity to intermix that in. But it seems that that was all BS. Watching season 1, outside of a couple of bumpy places, it was a brilliant. X-Men 97 was out of the world. I loved it.
Really, really good.
And I was talking to Andre earlier, and I was like, I felt really bad that I shit all over season 1 before it came out. And he brought up a point that I wanted to discuss, which is Hollywood has lost our trust. When they explain that this is going to be woke, and then they tell you it's going to be woke, then they bring the showrunner on who's kind of intimates that it's going to be woke. Well, that's what you expect. Well, now that he's gone, X-Men 97 says for season 2, now that it's coming back, that again, it's going to be woke. And I don't know if this is misery marketing. They're trying to gaslight people, but I wanted to hear what y'all thought. They're basically saying that one of the characters called Morph is in love with Wolverine and they want to create this relationship. So what do you think?
That's not, that was weird for me because with Morph, especially, like, apparently he's always been known as a man. He can just transform into other people. So he's not non-binary, but of course in today's world that can't be enough.
Right.
If Wolverine's the straightest guy to ever exist, like, he would never go for another man. He only has eyes for Jean Grey and Storm in certain comics, I guess, too.
Yeah, he's not popping his claws from Morph. Yeah.
No. So the whole idea of that is just ridiculous. But me and Flash were talking about the X-Men 97 and stuff, man. It's such a great show. And I was completely wrong. I even apologized to Bo DeMaio on Twitter. I was like, I was wrong. I was expecting this to be horrible. And it was
That's what I'm saying. Should we have apologized? That's the thing. I was Andre. Are you there, Andre?
Yeah, of course I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Because that's kind of like what I was saying. I don't think that anyone should feel bad for trashing this show in advance for the exact reasons that you pointed out. They came out and they practically said, if you are a fan, this ain't for you. You're not welcome to watch this. This is for modern audiences only. Look, here, we hired a gay black man to share his experiences as a gay black man. That's what's going to influence this series. And that's what he said too. I mean, he was public about it. He practically said, I was hired because I'm a gay black man. And then also look at everything else that has come from Marvel in particular, but also everything else from Hollywood, recently everything in gaming. How are we supposed to trust this? Why should we keep an open mind when they tell us so very clearly that there's no reason to keep an open mind here? This is going to be another woke fest. I don't think that that anyone should feel bad for judging this off the bat, because they gave you every single reason to. You'd have to actually go with a massive leap of faith, saying, I'm going to wait and see how this turns out, after they have told you this is going to be a disaster. And then as it turns out, it wasn't. Well, then you do the right thing by saying, whoa, we jumped to conclusions on this one. This actually turned out pretty good. Marvel, what the hell were you doing firing this guy? Because he actually did something really unusual for Marvel, modern day Marvel, that is, and made something
And you
good.
answered your own
why
question.
is he fired? And that probably is why he was fired, because he didn't make what he was supposed to do. He didn't make this a series about his perspective as a gay black man, but he made the series that he wanted to see as a fan, and let that come first. And probably that is the crime for which he was fired, because there's nothing else that has come to light that would explain why he would be difficult to work with. So then I salute everyone that come out and says to the bio, to the Mayo himself, that, boy, this actually was really, really good. Who would have thought that, given the conversation that came from the studio, not from the fans, but from the studio and their official narrative? It's good despite what they were saying, because they lied in the marketing. They sold the series as something that it wasn't. And no one should feel guilty for trashing it in advance, because we believed them when they said it was going to be a woke fest, and it wasn't.
Well, and the beauty of it is, in hindsight, in that interview, we actually get to go back and go, okay, so now we have proof of what we've been saying all along, is that they are more worried about the sexual orientation and the color of the skin of the individual who's telling the story or directing it or being the showrunner than they are the actual story itself. And so DeMeo just happened to be the exception, right? And we kind of got hints of this from Witcher, and this is why I kind of was always, I mean, I don't know, Andre can back me up on this if not. I kind of always hedged it with him. I'm like, unless we see something worse than this, I'm not buying into this whole he was difficult to work with and they fired him over his OnlyFans that they already knew about crap and all this other stuff. I was like, he basically told us that he was hired because he was black and gay, and they wanted him to bring that perspective to X-Men. Only him bringing that perspective to X-Men is doing what basically Bryan Singer did, right? Going back to what he said, yeah.
With reference
which
to
was
Chernobyl, for those who have seen that, they made the accident of hiring the one good man for this series. Yeah, no, like Tom was right. And for those that don't remember what Tom was referring to there about The Witcher, he was the guy who actually came out, and he used to be part of the Witcher writing team, and he threw Lauren Hisrich and that entire writing team under the bus, probably saying that they basically hated the source material, they hated the writer, they hated that it was white, and they were determined to change it, because they deemed it as problematic and in need of fixing, and he couldn't work under that condition, so he left that to do what was right for X-Men 97. That was when we first learned about this guy, and of course then later came the official conversation coming from this, which was very different. But probably he was right that first time. That's what came from the heart.
But the thing is, the X-Men have always stood in for, take your pick on what marginalized group you might be a part of or identify with. The X-Men, what was so great about that concept was anybody could see themselves in the X-Men metaphorically. And I think with Beau DeMayo, you know, while he on two sides, being both black and gay, understood what it's like to be on the outside of things. And he brought that perspective, not necessarily like everybody does, allegorically to the show, the way he should have. And I thought that what they did with the X-Men, they delved into all these classic storylines, and his perspective from two different angles allowed him to make an overall great show without having to make it specifically about anything, specifically about being gay or specifically about being black, because the X-Men allegorically stand for all groups that feel marginalized or outside. And that's why I think he did such a great job of being a showrunner.
And that's what I was getting to. Yep.
I think there's something like, you know, when you've got a different tone of skin color, you know what I mean? Look, I like to think that when I come on these live streams, I add a diversity of opinion, but it's not because I happen to have dark skin and was a California Chicano. You know, it's when these people expect people like me or like Gothix with you, with your case with the Black Girl Gamers or whatnot. You know, if my only value is whatever I'm supposed to be on screen for you to use as a message, that's no diversity at all. That's merely just using me. I mean, right, Gothix? I mean, it's like basically you're using me as a coin toss to, like, you know, get yourself a little non-racist chip at the casino.
Yeah, it's fake diversity. It's like we're decorations that don't need to think.
Which is so bizarre.
They don't treat you like real people.
And what Robert was saying is exactly what I was getting to, and you would know because you worked on the DVDs and stuff, Robert, for X-Men. That I swear it's in one of the interviews where Brian flat out says, he's like, I wasn't even a fan of X-Men growing up, but when I read some of the comics in preparation, I realized, oh, I can relate to this growing up as a bisexual gay man type situation. And instead of bringing that thing to the table, he just brought what you just said. And that's what I think Bo was doing here. And that's what I was comparing it to, is he brought his experience as an outsider to the table, not as the specific, I'm a gay black man experience to the table, which is what Feige was asking for.
I mean,
which is why
Ian
I think he was
McKellen
probably ousted. Yeah.
Ian McKellen, I made a clip, you know, I put it up on Shorts on YouTube of when I interviewed McKellen, and he said, I think that Ian McKellen, am a mutant. And he explains, as a gay man, he identified with the mutants. And there's even the line in, was it X2, can't you just try not being a mutant? You know, and there's that was what it was all about. But to be that specific, you take away the audience's ability to identify however they want to identify. When you make it so specific, then suddenly you're limiting. I mean, what's so weird to me is that there are two things that are happening in our culture. One, there is a fundamental lack of respect for other people. That was not, I mean, one of the things, I never heard my parents, my mom and dad, never said a bad word about another human being. I never heard a bad word ever uttered in my household about anybody of any persuasion, ever. My dad actually had a healthy, he loved people. He loved walking into a room, going to a party and meeting everybody. That was no matter who they were. And I think that of all the things that my dad instilled in me was a love of people. And I see it's disturbing how social media has chipped away at the respect we fundamentally have for one another, the sovereignty of each individual to be their own person. And we expect if you don't like what I like, then F you. And it's really, I think it's a disheartening development we've seen as a result of the rise of social media. But the X-Men were the exact opposite of that. The X-Men were all about inclusion. And I mean, that was the thing, that the DEI of the X-Men was implicit. You know, it wasn't explicit. They didn't have to tell you, well, you belong and you're part of this. It was part of the essence of what the characters were about. But people were smart enough to understand that. Nowadays, it's like, nope, you have to name check whatever group I belong to. Otherwise, you're not an ally. And that's silly.
It is silly, but is this what I want to know is Gothix, like I saw your video from last month where you're talking about that toxicity rating system.
You were killing your videos the last couple months have been killing it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
killing
it.
I fell down that rabbit hole about what happened to you. I'm like, I had to watch it all.
Well, I had two questions. One, because you did your movie, it got 5th place, the documentary, didn't it?
It won Austin Film Festival. Yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah. Now we're gonna go to the global circuit next year, I think.
Did you go to the film? Did you go to that festival?
No, so it was an online film festival, so I didn't actually have to go anywhere, but people watched it, and then they had judges vote on, and leave their comments, and yeah, it won.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So are you gonna make another one?
I don't know. I don't think there's a need. I think the story's told. It's
I think
wake
it needs
up,
a sequel, Gothix.
Don't be afraid to speak, voice your mind, and stop being a coward.
Stop being undercover now. That's the sequel. You go undercover on the other.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of. I like to say I go incognito because of my hair, and I kind of look like the other side, so it works.
It was
Wow.
great, but that toxicity rating system you were talking about, you're like, just grow a spine. You were
Yeah.
saying that. Do you see a lot of what's happening right now? It's like sometimes with the X-Men series, yeah, they got rid of Beau DeMayo, right? But
Mhm.
they were really leading up to this is going to be a woke production. It's not for you, it's for our Twitter hashtag heroes and weekend, culture warriors. But then it was the exact opposite. We can say that's why Beau DeMayo was fired. But do you think now that they're projecting that season 2 is going to be woke, are they kind of using a lot of that as gaslighting?
I'm
But
sure.
didn't he already write it? Didn't
He said he
did,
wrote
yeah.
part of
He
it.
did, yeah.
Or is all of it? Because I read part of
Yeah.
it. Okay, so he
I'm
wrote it
pretty
all.
sure he wrote all of it. Yeah, pretty
Okay,
sure.
well, that'll be good. But are they using now, again, the
They
woke
apparently
mindset?
have no choice because, from what I understand, there was someone else who told me this. I don't recall who, but apparently, so kudos to whoever said this, may have been Script Doctor, but apparently they are already so far along in the production of season 2. They would already have done like preliminary audio, started animation and stuff like that, so it's too late to change it. So it's going to be the season 2 as he wrote it. They can make changes from season 3 onwards, but making any serious changes to season 2 would probably be cost prohibitive.
Okay, so we're probably going to get the same thing again, the same quality.
Probably, which means they're lying. They're trying to gaslight you, trying to tell their party that no, more is coming. It's going to be super duper woke, just like they said with season 1. Because now you obviously have some activists in the marketing department, and this is the only way they know how to sell is pander harder.
Right, but are they pandering to them or are they trying to gaslight us?
I think they're trying to pander to them. I think that they live in such a bubble that they think that that's the real world because they're bubble dwellers.
Bubble dwellers. I
But
like this.
inside of that bubble, inside of that little Hollywood LA bubble, if they live in it, that's all they see. To them, that is the world. Remember that whenever someone is talking about, oh, this movie or this series is going to reflect what the real world actually looks like, and it doesn't reflect the real world anywhere other than a couple of postcodes in LA. No one else on the planet is able to recognize whatever a Hollywood producer thinks the real world looks like. No, what they really mean is, oh, it's going to reflect our little bubble right here where we live, because this is what we see. This is our lived experience. Therefore, we think that this is the entire world, which it isn't.
That's pretty like a pathetic point
They
of view.
kind of
if you think
forgot
about
that all the weirdos went to California in the first place.
Yeah, but if you think about it, Andre and Tom, it's
And I
kind
mean
of
that in the nicest sense sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, but it used to be something good because you'd have people who are eccentric thought outside of the box. Yeah, all those people now they think inside of the box.
But at least then they were well aware of what was going on to a point, at least in a sense that, like we brought up Philadelphia earlier, is a great example of that, right? And in California at that time, I mean, you were probably, that was around the time you probably lived there, I think, Robert, so you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I moved here in '88 from
It was
Seattle.
really well-known epidemic. I mean, it was probably well talked about. There was a lot of people who knew each other that were dealing with it because, large gay population out there.
Even in Seattle, there was a Paramount
Yeah.
when it was a regional, and he announced that he was HIV positive, and over the course of just a few months, it was
But I
shocking
mean,
to watch his
you
descent.
go to Middle America, it wasn't until Freddie Mercury said, "I'm dying of AIDS," or
And
you
Rock
had
Hudson, and Rock Hudson.
Rock Hudson and
Rock.
all that kind of stuff, and then people started to realize what it was all about. Before that, you just had whispers and talks about it, and then a movie like Philadelphia comes along. So that's when they were actually kind of telling people what was going on out there. And you can say the same thing about other films prior to that too. But now they think they're doing that, and they're not. They're not changing crap. They're not adding to anything. They're just trying to teach us what they think is right. I've used restaurants analogies and other things
And
like
if I
that.
may
Paul,
add-
I was going to say, Paul just brought it up the other day, and he's 100% right. Hollywood has always made stuff for themselves. It's just now they're out of touch. They're still making stuff for themselves. That's the problem, going off of what you're just saying. Go ahead, Andre. Sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut there. But also to add to that, because Robert, you're of course right. Movies like Philadelphia, they made a huge difference, a positive difference. Many people became aware of AIDS because of Rock Hudson, but I don't know that that was a positive thing, because what happened in the aftermath of Rock Hudson wasn't understanding, it was massive stigma and fear. That's what happened. It was like, oh shit, anyone can be gay. Anyone can infect me with this horrible disease of which we know nothing. That's what happened in the aftermath of Rock Hudson. It ruined his reputation, ruined his legacy, and it created massive fear in society. So honestly, nothing good came from that. Whereas Freddie Mercury, he was much more popular. It came as no surprise that he was gay or anything like that. That put a face to it, and the 1-2 punch of that in Philadelphia, that made a difference, a very real difference. But I would say also one more final, and this was the point I was making. When you look at the end result of Hollywood's virtue signaling right now, it has the opposite effect. Just look at what has happened with LGBTQ acceptance over the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
It has gone down. Many of the previous battles, like now, people are starting to be more negative again, and that is of course because of all of this overexposure and having flag and rainbow flag shoved down your throat.
Well, I think that's because of the T. I think no one had a problem with it before. It's because you've had one element which has attached itself. I think, if I'm correct in that assessment.
Well, not only that, they wanted more acceptance than anything before, and now it's not just acceptance; it's something worse. It's something more.
But Robert, you were saying something because you were taking your breath to speak there before I so rudely rushed to my point there.
Oh, well, no, I mean, I was going to say that I think you're exactly right. But the point I was going to make is that those films also were how stories are supposed to work, you know, and when you're telling these kinds of stories, the basic human truths of human interaction, when you have two people that come together, like Denzel Washington in that movie does not want to take this case, but then he finds he himself, his character is very human, and through his performance comes to sympathize with Tom Hanks and sees what happened to him he was wronged. He was railroaded out of his job, and Denzel Washington's character takes the case on because it's the right thing to do. And whether or not, you know, you were a fan or what was going on, the story that was being told in that movie, despite all what it was really about, was how do you be a good human being? Where's the empathy? Where does it come from? And all of our great stories, in a way, deal with how do we deal with one another, whether it's on a grand scale, like something like Lawrence of Arabia, or how is it on a one-to-one scale? And the problem with Flights of Fancy, I love Marvel movies as much as the next person, but if you go back and you watch the first Iron Man, it's amazing how what a personal story that movie actually is. It's about one man having a comeuppance and realizing maybe selling arms isn't the best thing that I should be doing with my talents. And he makes a change in himself. And we can all see that, because even though we don't identify with being a billionaire like Tony Stark or one of the most brilliant people in the world, we can all identify with making a change in our own life for the better. And that's what all of our great stories used to do, even our Flights of Fancy. And the first 23 movies of the Infinity Saga, even though they were about superheroes, we believed in those people. We believed in those characters because they were, after all, us. They were not, other than Thor, they were not gods. They were people that had to step up to the plate and make the world a better place. And yet they did so at their peril. And I think that that's what we're missing now. We're missing a truthful, you have to tell truthful stories. I call it fraudulent creation. Around us, we have so much fraudulent creation in everything, in politics, not just in storytelling, but no one's telling the truth anymore. And we all know it. And we're all living in a world where we're supposed to normalize these lies. And it's getting, and they're coming at us from every direction, whether it's the price of food at the grocery store or whether it's somebody lying to our face that we know. That we are now living in a counterfeit world, and it's getting worse. And the question is, why is this happening?
Well, what do you think
what are we
about
all going to do about it?
Well, what do you think about Disney, which lost 10% in its stock this week, and then it came out that they lost $4 billion for Disney Plus. And Iger's, pretty much what I took as his excuse was that, well, we overinvested, and we went with quantity instead of quality. And now we're having to cut back on everything. It's like we've been talking about that at least since I started on YouTube almost 3 years ago.
Yep.
That it was just volume instead of doing the right thing. And so now they're going to try to overcorrect.
Two things about that. First, and this is the one thing I think it's so funny that Bob Iger never ever mentioned. He says, we did that. There was this desire from some nebulous person that he presumably answers to. Say it, Iger. It was you. It was your decision to do this. It was you, Bob Iger, that decided to do quantity over quality in the name of pushing your baby Disney Plus. That's what happened. And he's just trying to obfuscate from that. Now, that's one thing. The other thing is that it's also just an excuse, because the point that I have made in a couple of live streams and the most recent video actually is, okay, let's look at that argument. Let's look at Marvel, which is the one that suffered the worst from this strategy of quantity over quality. Let's just look at last year, and let's take you. 3 movies came out in that year. It was Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2, it was Quantumania, and it was The Marvels. Now let's just, for fun, let's take away one of those 3 movies. As for even more fun, take away Guardians of the Galaxy, the one movie that there wasn't anything wrong with. Let's now say that they either have to concentrate only on Quantumania or on The Marvels.
Good luck.
Both of these movies had so deep structural problems that taking away one isn't going to fix anything. The only thing that's going to fix, right, if you take away The Marvels, now maybe you have more money for the special effects budget for Quantumania, but it's not going to change the story. No. It's not going to change the character assassination of Kang, who had his ass handed to him by freaking Ant-Man. It's not going to change the fact that his daughter is now in Antifa. It's not going to change anything fundamentally. That is what really broke that movie. The problem, what he's basically saying is that, okay, all of our projects right now, since we have gotten rid of all of the good people who know how to make movies, is that now we put out a bunch of shit movies. Now we're going to cut it down so that we make less shit movies. But they're still going to be shit because we haven't actually addressed the fundamental issue that we don't have the proper talent behind the scenes that can make good stuff the way that we used to before. Because those people, they're not there anymore.
So they're just going to cut their losses. Basically, what you're saying is not going to make anything good. They're just going to cut how much they're losing, right?
Yeah, they're going to make less shit. But
less shit.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the same mentality. It's the same mentality they had with Star Wars. Remember, right? Like that was Bob Iger's big thing. We did too much too fast. It's like, no, what you should have done is not done any of the shit you did, clearly, because it doesn't matter if you do less. You're still got nothing but shit. Because Star Wars, we did have nothing but shit. Sans maybe, I guess, Rogue One to some people, right? So at that point, the real problem was, yes, the only thing you said that of actual accuracy was you rushed. Because the moment they bought Star Wars, they jumped right into The Force Awakens instead of actually doing it like they should have and stepping back and going, okay, we need to treat this like Lord of the Rings, since we know we're doing 3 films in a trilogy, and film all 3 films at once after they're all written. Well, guess what? It's going to take you a good 2 years to write those 3 films. So in the meantime, you just bank and cash in on all the classic Star Wars stuff. And that's what they should have done, is just sat on it while they were actually sitting down and structuring out a 3-act movies, of set of movies, a trilogy. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, Andre's 100% correct on that too. It's just,
so since you talked about that, what do you think about that Prime? Was it called Prime Jedi? Star Wars, the Prime Jedi?
Jedi Prime.
Jedi Prime. I couldn't believe when I heard that. I was
the thing we sacrificed Indiana Jones for.
Yeah, pretty much. But I guess we're going to touch on the last one after we finish. But did y'all see the Rings of Power trailer? Anyone?
I did not watch it. No.
Platoon?
Yes. I did see it.
You did see it.
I did see it. Yeah.
Wigs of Power?
Wigs of Power. Yeah. Actually, I almost missed it completely. Actually, I got a text through. Someone just sent me the message, Wigs of Power. So what the heck are you talking about? Then I watched the trailer and realized what all that was about. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much thoughts about it. I mean, I think it's absolutely impossible to fix. I don't see a way of clawing it back. Even if you employed people of a much higher caliber than you got for season 1, which they haven't done because they took the opinion that the major problem with season 1 was that there was not enough estrogen in the director's chair. So we need more of that, and that will solve everything. More female directors.
Isn't
great
it only
stuff.
women directors?
Yes,
I think it is. Yeah, that will absolutely make everything better. But even if they hadn't done that, I still don't think you'll recover the audience's estimation because you've done so much to completely wreck it. You've already established that you've broken anything that matters in the canon. You're barely adapting canon to begin with. What you're really doing is just using occasional names and places and telling your own bad story, and then telling the audience that this is the story Tolkien never could tell. Which is you pissed so many people off. You can't get this back. And then the trailer comes out. I mean, it looks flashy enough, I suppose. I wouldn't be surprised if it were slightly better than season 1, if only because it would be hard for it to be worse. But I don't think slightly better will really cut it.
Well, has that ever happened in gaming, Endymion, where you had a first, like the first in the franchise of a game where it comes out, it flops, it pisses everybody off, and they repair it?
They patch it after the fact. No Man's Sky,
like where it gets the audience.
I mean, yeah, technically, what Little Platoon's saying, there is like success stories in a sense where they release something that flops and then they fix it. Yeah, No Man's Sky is probably a good example of that. There's honestly not that many. Most games, if they come out and they're bad, they're just bad. There's sometimes they've tried fixing stuff like some of the Battlefield games, but it's always been too little, too late. Yeah, I'm kind of blanking.
No, honestly, because I've never seen a television show.
There is one that I thought about. Final Fantasy 14. It's an online game. When it first came out, it was terrible. It was horrible. It did so bad. And then they brought on this guy named Naoki Yoshida, and he basically fixed the whole game with his team. And then they relaunched the game called A Realm Reborn.
Okay.
And they cleverly used the destruction of the original game to tell the story. And now that game is technically the biggest moneymaker, if you will, for Square Enix. So that's probably one of the biggest success stories from going from like 0 to hero is probably Final Fantasy 14. But like Little Platoon said, No Man's Sky as well. That game was, when it came out, dog shit. Now, really good. So
because I don't know any television show. I don't know any television show which loses its entire audience in season 1 and then can gain them back.
Well, no, because in TV, right, you lose your audience, you're done. So
well, I was just curious if there was any correlation in gaming. Do you know one, Platoon or Rob?
Robert will probably have a better opinion on this than I do, but Picard season 3, I think, was much more popular than seasons 1 and 2 and did repair some of the damage that seasons 1 and 2 had done. So it's not completely impossible to make.
I wonder, though, if that would have ever happened in a world where Star Trek was still on network television and not streaming, though, because a lot of people came into season 3 completely cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they knew going into it what they were looking for exactly, like because of people like Robert and everybody else. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up too. I wonder if that's, like in a normal world, in a normal situation where shows are just on regular television, I don't think it would have got to season 3 was my point.
Well, I think it really comes down to what you want from people are passionate creators working on things that they're passionate about. I mean, it seems so simple, but now what I find so crazy is obviously profit. When you're a corporation, your job is to make money for your shareholders and the people that own the company. That's your job. That's all that matters. And this idea that you can take a brand like Star Wars and just make more of it, that's thinking along the lines of food or clothing or something. Whereas entertainment has a whole different level to it. Star Wars isn't just a product. People aren't going to buy. We saw that with the merchandising of a movie like Phantom Menace. Those the figures for Phantom Menace, those toys, famously sat on pegs for a long time. They were under the impression that anything Star Wars would sell. And with Phantom Menace, they proved that, well, no, that's not what happened. And now I think there is this weird thinking that any IP will just sell. And yet there's no understanding, well, it has to be good. When you're making a story, it has to touch people. It has to, live in your imagination. It has to live in your heart and your dreams, whatever. And that's not easy to do. But there's a thought, and Bob Iger was guilty of this, let's just make more Marvel. Well,
that's like having more bad sex.
Well, I mean, it's
doing something bad. It's like, hey, this is bad. Let's just keep doing bad. More bad.
Well, I mean, but the thing about it is they're acting like any product will you can just make it and it's going to be good and sell. And that has never been the case. You know, a product, an entertainment product, is only as good as the creatives behind it. And much as that might be a pain in the ass, you have to hire people that are passionate. I don't know why Disney wasn't throwing a wide net out going, okay, we now own Star Wars. Let's have a conclave and bring the 30 best filmmakers in all of Hollywood together and have some kind of a caucus. Tell us what you think. What can we do? What should we do with this franchise? Why didn't they have people going back and looking through all the comic books and all the novels that were already published, which is now what they're doing anyway. They're dipping into the Dark Empire comics from the early 90s. They're dipping into the Thrawn novels. Star Trek is now going into all this licensed stuff already, and people are just ripping it off wholesale. But this should have been done from the very beginning. But nobody is there thinking this way. And it's really odd to me because it's not exactly rocket science.
You're right. I want to ask, because Gothic has to get going. Before you go, Gothix, thank you so much for coming. As a fan of pop culture and gaming, someone who's, seen it from ground zero, do you see, are we at a point where we can make a positive change like you see in the future, or has we crossed the point of no return?
It depends what people define as positive, because everyone has their own different interpretation of that, which I think is part of the problem. We have to know exactly what it is we're walking towards. And so I think that's the first thing. But as far as can we make a positive change, assuming we're all defining it the same way? It depends on how much people actually want to get involved, as opposed to just complaining about things. I'm at the stage now where I'm very solutionary. Okay, can we fund movies? Can we get into writing? What can we do from the ground level, as opposed to expecting more of other people to fill that gap for us? Because at the end of the day, these are just other people that could do a 180. We could be supporting certain people in Hollywood that just decide to be woke one day. We don't know. So it really just depends on us.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming. I know, please let everybody know where they can find you and what you have coming up next. And thank you for coming.
Thank you guys for having me. You guys can find me on YouTube, Gothix TV, and you can watch the Gothix documentary on lore, and it should be coming to Amazon Prime hopefully soon.
Awesome.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, I can't wait. We'll push it here as soon as it gets there. Thank you again, Gothix, for coming.
All right, cool. Enjoy.
Great
Bye.
to stream with you.
Bye-bye.
An honor.
Have a good day.
Oh, she's awesome. Love Gothix. All right, now, so we're going to start to wrap up before we go into, so we can go into the after party, which whoever wants to stay is more than welcome to stay. We're going to do our super chats first. From Stubble McShave, SCK is what? I forgot what that was.
Swedish krona.
Swedish krona again. Okay, for 50 Swedish krona. I enjoyed Shogun, even though they took big liberties with the material. What are your thoughts on more seasons without having a book to base it on? I know I read that they're doing a season 2 because it was their most popular series ever.
I haven't finished it yet. I'm 5 episodes in. I really like it, but what I find is whenever people make things when they don't have the source material, it's terrible.
Yeah,
Thrones, for example. So I'm gonna watch the first season, obviously, enjoy it, and then if season 2 ends up being bad, I'll just be like, oh, it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
it was just one season and that was it.
I'll tell you where I have faith. Only if Hideo is the producer again, and he's involved. The guy who played Toranaga.
Oh, that's his name is Hiroyuki Sanada, I think.
Yeah, Hiroyuki. I can never say it. Hiroyuki. If he's involved, then I think it'll be good. It'd be like trying to make One Piece without its creator Ichiro Oda.
But I can give you another example where that has actually worked.
Okay.
Rambo. First Blood is one novel. All the sequels is made up Hollywood BS, I was about to say, but still it kind of worked, didn't it? Certainly some of them really worked. So it can be done.
It can be, but that was a long time ago, Andre.
Well, Last Blood.
And I feel like Rambo is a simple enough concept that you could have more leeway with it. Whereas with Shogun, it's more of a, easiest way to explain it, it's like Japanese Game of Thrones, basically.
And there are other novels, right? But they take place in completely different time periods, correct?
Right. Yeah, there are. Jeff in the chat is saying there are more books. Yes, there are, but they're not talking about making those. They're talking about continuing the story from the end of the book in Shogun and writing their own to keep going from that point forward. That's what
See,
they're saying. Listen.
and this is part of the problem with, I think, with the younger generation coming in, is that this is where I feel like they want to do their own things, clearly. Because otherwise, why would you want to extend this story beyond what the book is and take that chance?
Because it was their biggest hit ever.
No, I know, but I mean, there are people who clearly want to put their own stamp on things. Is my point, though, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Otherwise, why would you want to do something this crazy and silly? Because it would make sense just to do the next book and just recast everybody as different characters in the next book.
Yeah, because
right? Like
they
do
did
with
that.
American Horror Story and stuff. But anyway.
Right. No, they did that in the 80s. They did Shogun, then they did, I think it was Taipei and Noble House. But those, again, different times, different places. And I think one was about Hong Kong. I think that was Noble House or Taipei. But no, they want but they want to move forward with a second season. Okay, we got Dolbin for $2. 2 kinds of good movies: tell stories or give rides. I like that. Yeah. Kenneth Dowling for $10. Part 1. Shout out to Robert Meyer Burnett on his comment of my last chat. And he said about how he grew up and how to treat people I love. In today's society, there's a kind of vengeance allowed.
Oh, all of this is people getting downtrodden people for whatever they want their payback. And that's they're willing to go take their pound of flesh no matter what happens to the people they believe have done them wrong. And that to me is the most dangerous kind of mob mentality, because they're one step away from picking up torches and pitchforks and coming after you, coming right through your front door and saying your house is now mine, your life means nothing, goodbye. And that's what we've seen, this ideology play out throughout human history. And it's not about equality, it's about vengeance. And whether people want to admit it or not, that's what we're seeing. How can we go after this person and destroy them?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, you're absolutely right, Robert. And this is why I say that these people, this is why they don't understand how to write heroes, and they're more sympathetic with the villains, because they don't understand what makes a hero and a villain a villain. And I mean, there's a couple different definitions, but one version of it is where a hero is somebody who has something bad happen to them, or somebody seen as a certain way in society, but instead of taking it out on society, they try to help others and make sure whatever bad thing happened to them doesn't happen to anybody else. A villain is somebody who has that said bad thing happen to them, or is somebody who's an outsider of society and takes it out on everybody else.
I agree.
See, they can relate to that. They understand that.
Well, because
they don't
gut.
understand the other thing. Yeah.
Well, it's gut. You're talking about a gut level, but here there's part 2 from Kenneth Dowling. And he was basically saying vengeance toward white people for the past. As a black man, I am not down for that. I want universal respect and love toward white people, men, women, everyone. And Gothix always kills it. She's awesome. Yes,
she really is.
Hopefully we can have her back. She's amazing. But you heard what Robert and Tom were saying. And
well, she suffered the same fate. People went after her. They wanted vengeance. And if you ever stop and listen to her channel, she is a very thoughtful individual. And she has, I would trust her more than I would trust the people that went after her. They weren't paying attention to what she was saying.
No.
And it's a scary place to be, when we're because, we want to believe, I ultimately want to believe that people are inherently, ultimately, relatively good. But there are those that are not. And that is just a reality of life. And you have to be ready for that. And you have to be ever vigilant. But this idea now is when you see people gleefully going after other people to do them harm, that's disconcerting. And I keep wondering, are we being engineered by social media to do just that? I think we are.
Yep.
But it by certain bad actors, and we're seeing it. I mean, we're being propagandized every moment of every day, and unfortunately, we in the West have allowed this to happen, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, but we're fighting back. You can see just even having the conversations here, this spreads. It goes from one person to the next.
Yep.
And more people are opening up and waking up. How many of you are wanting, if y'all want to stay for the after party, whoever wants to, please do, but let everyone know where they could find you. We can start with Robert as we wrap up.
You can find me on Instagram at RM Burnett, or find me, or Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on on YouTube at The Burr Network or on X at RMBEE.
And happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Again. And Demian, always great to have you here.
Thank
Again,
you.
if you want to stay, you're more than happy to.
I got to go, but if you want to watch all of my nonsense, then Demion TV on YouTube and Demion YT on Twitter, because I'm a dumbass and didn't make it in Demion TV. And it's too late now. What else? That's about it, really. Yeah, I do stuff on video games, mostly entertainment, TV sometimes, but mostly video games. And yeah, I have to go though, but thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure, my
Nice to
friend.
see you again, Tom.
Never get to talk.
Yeah, it hasn't even been 12 hours since I saw you last time.
Oh, yeah, Flashcast.
Yeah. Everywhere
Andre?
I go, there's Tom. Tom is just everywhere I go.
He's everywhere.
Many of the places where Tom goes, you'll also find me over on Midnight's Edge, and we are also live three times a week, and we hope to have you there and me on in the next few days. It would be awesome to have you pop in later this week or something. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, if you want
You
to
have
talk
to
about
reach
video
out to
games,
you. We don't
whatever,
get to
let me know.
talk enough as it is. So.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's way too rare.
Of course.
Way too rare.
I'll be there as long as Tom is there. I'll be there.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Tom, where can they
Is it my
find
turn?
you? Yeah.
Well, since nobody's done it yet, I think somebody should bring up that Robert had a birthday recently. So I want to say happy birthday to Robert because nobody
I
else
forgot
did.
to say it, Rob. Belated happy birthday.
But yeah, of course I'm on Midnight's Edge, but I also have another channel, although YouTube doesn't want you to know about it, called Midnight's Edge After Dark. It is a completely separate channel from Midnight's Edge. We get a little kookier over there, a little funnier, a little, after darkish, I guess. So the name is apropos, or however you want to put it. And there's it's still there. Check it out. We do live streams twice a week, if not 3 times or more a week over there. So please don't forget to and of course Lost Classics as well, Olaf. Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you as always for having me, George. It's always a blast to get to hang out with you.
It's my pleasure, my friend.
On Tuesdays and Thursdays night on Tom's channel, I get to say things I can't say in the morning that Andre won't let me say.
We let him say just about anything.
Like what?
Oh, well, you got to tune in to find
Well,
out.
he says words all the time.
Little Platoon.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm still free, so I'll be happy to stick around for the members thing after if you've got the space. Yeah, I'm at the Little Platoon is the main channel. Big old Rebel Moon video dropped yesterday. Was it yesterday? I've already lost track of time. I think it was yesterday. There's a big old video up there now, which was an absolute nightmare to get out. So I'm glad that it's done. Lost Chord is the second channel, and it's at Platoon Pod on Twitter.
That's beautiful. What are you working on? Something new now? Or are you going to go for the...
Possibly a little short Doctor Who video. I probably have to do one because Netflix has forced me to demonetize the Rebel Moon one. So in order for me and my editor to actually eat this month, I'm going to have to do another couple of videos. But yeah, it might be Doctor Who. Just taking a look at the new episodes, which have been yes. And after that, probably the Acolyte will be the next big thing. So yes, plenty more coming.
Oh, I forgot about that. God.
If you need to get around copyright stuff, I know an artist called Not Some Kid does great work.
See, I would take you up on that, except that Netflix is actually blocking videos and content they don't own, and YouTube is allowing them to do it. So it wouldn't make a difference. So yeah, but thank you for the offer.
Which is redonkulous. I can't believe they're allowing that. But yeah.
And when we have one more
there.
Yeah, it happens. We have one more super chat before that came in late. Let's read that real quick, Mike, before we go to the after party. We got from Aaron Charman for £5. Any lore Amazon creates should fit with Tolkien's own and not work against it in any way. I agree with you. I can't stand Jeff Bezos' midlife crisis, but it is what it is, and we are going to roast every episode. If they actually do something that's accurate, I promised it for season 1. I will call it out. I highly doubt
We
it.
didn't even talk about like the nut sack stamp that Warner Brothers put on Amazon this week.
Which one was? We can talk about it now.
Well, we talked about the after party.
Yeah, in the after party, the Peter Jackson.
I'm going to go for now then
announcement
while you
thing.
guys get that going. So thanks for having me, guys.
Take care,
Thank you,
brother.
Benjamin.
Bye, guys. See you
All
guys.
right, I'm going to run the bloopers reel, George, and then
Yep.
on the other side, you'll take care of the members only button.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Here we go. If you're a member, you got gifted a member, stick around. Here we go.
It's over, Disney. We're off to the races. I think it's going to be a great video. Absolutely not. Nope, I don't like that. No security checks, no background vetting, just a Unfortunately, he lost this round for the second time in 2 years. Oh, I got to do that again. With someone like, well, and I fucked that whole thing up. What's going on, everybody? No, that was weird. You're going to have to decide that. No, I don't like that. I don't know. One more time. Damn it. In 2024 alone, 4 months into the year. Oh, I just screwed up. We never bow down. We never bend. I didn't like that. I lifted my hand too soon. That he is as important as the Royals are. No, I don't like that. Having trouble connecting. Please check it. Yet it is so wordly vague. Wordly vagued? What is that? Whoo! Many see the law as a raw power grab and nothing more by First Minister Hamza Yusuf. Planet right now. We're getting more connected every day, and that makes everything feel. No, I think that went great. And we're back. It should be now all the members. Wow. So we didn't talk about Rings of Power, and I really wanted to touch on that. But before we get that, there's something we were talking about how Avengers Endgame kind of like laid the track to kill Hollywood in many ways. But what I wanted to know is what's the difference between that? How come the cowboy era didn't kill Hollywood in the same way? Robert, Andre, Little Batoon, Tom.
Well, here's the thing about the thing about the cowboy genre is it's inherently about America itself. You know, the push westward, conquering the land. If there's any genre that is uniquely American, it is the cowboy genre. And I mean, it lasted for a good long time. By the time it got to the beginning of the deconstruction, you know, in the 60s and 70s, and I think ultimately 1992's Unforgiven is the great example of the deconstruction of the Western myth, which is why that movie's so great and why it won Best Picture. I mean, Richard Harris, when he talks about nobody thinks about assassinating a king or a queen because he's from England, but everybody can kill a president. You know, I mean, it was all right there. And I think that the Western myth is how Americans really liked to see themselves. And to a certain extent, we still do. It's just there is no more frontier to conquer. You know, there is no more great land rush. There is no more search for a better life by pushing westward. And then the whole West has been deconstructed anyway, so none of what we were watching was true.
Okay, so what's the next phase then? Like, if you could predict, anyone here, if you could predict what's the next phase? Superhero films completely die. What's next?
It's video games for the next few years at least, I would have thought. I mean, you'll see more and more video game adaptations, even the ones that come out which are not particularly good, like Fallout, which are nevertheless incredibly popular because they already have a built-in audience. And what do we know that film studios really like? It's a guaranteed audience which is receptive to their product. It's one of the reasons the superhero genre carries on going, is that you can carry on a dedicated comics audience at the beginning, and then the audience that you've built up over a decade of successful movies. And as long as the audience they think it's still in any way there, they'll keep making the films because it's easier than creating a brand new IP. Video games are incredibly popular. Fallout's come out. Borderlands is out this year, I think. The Mario movie did incredibly well. There's going to be a Nintendo Cinematic Universe, probably. You'll see more and more of these. It's whether or not they can recapture the financial success of something like Mario, which will, I think, determine how long that phase lasts. I kind of suspect it won't be as long-lasting as the superhero one, but I would be surprised if any other thing came up.
So you don't think they're gonna revert back, Platoon? You don't think they're gonna go? Okay, like I just saw something. It's a simple series, but it's something Hollywood used to do. It's called The Gentleman in Moscow. The Gentleman in Moscow, I believe it is. And I was sharing. I had called Robert up yesterday. I said I watched this. It was with Ewan McGregor and his wife. I think Mary Ann Winstead or Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I can't remember. And it was a simple, straightforward series. I'm still shocked that Hollywood put it out because it was about the Russian Revolution, you know, and all the dangers, and then Stalinism. But it's like they really hit it hard in many ways, how bad communism is. And I'm like, well, you got all these Marxists in Hollywood. How the hell are they doing this? But it reminded me of old Hollywood a lot. and I was kind of surprised. It was a decent story.
I think those are sort of niche entertainment these days, though, because we're so far removed from, say, the Cold War or anything that used to make the spy drama so massively impactful, because it was supremely relevant to the days you lived in. If you think about all the adaptations of John le Carre books and things like that, when they were coming out in the 70s and the 80s, Tinker Tailor, Soldier Spy, Smiley's People, and all the rest of that, they were all relevant because everyone was living through the Cold War at the time. And there was, a lot of communists around in Hollywood, but there were probably quite a few people who were not particularly keen on that as well. Whereas these days, we're so far removed from it that it's very fashionable, cheap, and easy to be a communist, and there's probably more of them in Hollywood. And there's not quite so much of an obvious reason to oppose them because there isn't the evil dictatorial regime behind the Iron Curtain that you can take shots at. So there's no real patriotic angle there either. So I really like spy thrillers of that sort. It's just I don't see them having the sort of mass appeal they used to solely because times have changed.
Right. Okay. It's just I've been trying because you were saying video games. I just keep hoping. I thought that once the superhero genre died, because we have Deadpool, right? We got Deadpool, and then we're gonna have Joker. What else is coming out that anyone is charged up, looking forward to? I mean, we used to know in advance, like, oh, Captain America is going to be coming out winter.
We have one more coming this year, actually, Venom. It's going to be the final Venom movie. I don't know that it's anything that people are excited about necessarily because the previous one was so bad, but that's coming, and it's coming this year. As to the main question, I agree that video games are the closest thing to like the next thing. But honestly, I'm not sure there's going to be like a one unifying, dominating thing. Certainly not for a long while. Like I'm not saying there's not going to be, but I don't think there necessarily.
And I think that would be a good thing too, to be honest with you.
People and interests are more fractured now. You have so many different things that people can get into. Superhero thing, that was kind of like the last thing that everyone and their mother could get into, that was unifying across the entire world. So everyone in the middle of Botswana will still know the image of Captain America and stuff. That's pretty rare. And I don't see anything that can have that kind of penetration, that worldwide penetration that the MCU used to have anymore. Not even the MCU. After they decided to go all diverse, so everyone all over the world could see themselves in it, that's when everyone all over the world lost interest, because that's not what they were in it for to begin with.
Yeah, I just thought maybe they would kind of retrace their steps, go backwards. Well, backwards.
No, never.
Meaning like we're going to start making independent films like we used to. The Verdict, Conan.
I wish they would, but they won't. And that's the thing, is I've said it many a time. Hollywood will never spend less on anything. They'll just find a way to make you or somebody else pay for it. And the thing about what worked about superhero movies and comparing them to things like Westerns, and what might work for the video games movies coming up, is that they had the same kind of morals, at least when they first started with superhero movies, and same kind of morals, and you could tell the same kind of breadth of stories in the superhero genre as you could in the Western genre. Because the Western genre was great because you could pretty much tell any story within it, right? It could be a comedy, it could be a horror, it could be an action, it could be a musical even. You could do the same thing pretty much be said for comic book movies and possibly for upcoming video game movies. And I think the success that video game movies might have is ones that'll hit with the general audience, where a lot of people may not even be aware that they were a video game, right? Because you saw that a little bit with the early comic book craze, with some stuff that hit here and there that people didn't even know were based on comic books. So we might get lucky.
Blue
with that,
is the warmest color.
There's a few of them you could bring up that as good examples. But Hollywood's tried the video game thing a few times now. It hasn't always worked. Outside of a few things that do work, like Mario Brothers and the exceptions to the rules, it'll be interesting to see what does and doesn't work. I think the horror games will probably have a little bit more success than anything else, because the horror genre has its own built-in audience already. Plus, you add in that video game audience, there's a win-win right there. But it's going to be kind of a crapshoot otherwise, unless you find a way to make that work, or video gaming has become that big as a general thing that people will tune in. But if it was the case, I don't know if, sorry, I was just going to say, the only thing I put against that is, like, I don't know if Fallout would have been as big of a hit if gaming was as broad, because the gamers that I know don't like the show. It's everybody else. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, gaming it rivals Hollywood in terms of the size of the industry, the money spent, the money brought in. I mean, it is significant. I think the mistake that might be made, though, probably by studios which will go all in on gaming as the next big trend, is that where Marvel could take not like really A-list comic heroes, even, you know, Iron Man is not really like the biggest. When you think of comics, you think Superman, Batman, Captain America probably is bigger, I imagine, than Iron Man is. They took a kind of a B-list maybe hero, and they did an incredibly good job with it, and then they spun it into a cohesive, broader story, which gave the entire thing purpose beyond just, hey, look, it's the comic you remember on the screen. And that's the thing that got more and more people interested, and a massive general audience. The problem I would be surprised if they avoid with video games is that the Mario movie was basically just, hey, it's like the game you played. Remember Mario? Yeah. Everyone played Mario. And then you look at, well, okay, what's the broader coherent story that you're building with this Mario movie? There isn't one. Will there be one when they release the Zelda movie? Are they going to somehow create the same sort of meta storyline that the MCU accomplished, which earned the general audience to begin with? I can't really see that happening. And I think the returns on just, hey, familiar thing on screen will be relatively short-lived. I think people will get bored if it's as relatively shallow as Mario is forever and ever and ever, because you're not really doing a story at that point. You are just jangling keys.
You don't think we're going to go? I hope we don't go to the Yui Bowl time period. Remember? Everybody see Yui Bowl.
I couldn't agree with Platoon more, though, about that, because the thing is, there's a familiarity that people look, if the Zelda movie comes out and it's a great movie, maybe it'll but like Mario, everyone is going to see these things because they know Mario. It's truly, when you call something nostalgia bait, that's exactly what it is. But I don't think that I think Hollywood is best at delivering. We've seen stories like Top Gun Maverick was obviously nostalgia bait, but it was also a good film in its own right, because they basically made Star Wars, so people got it. But I do think
too, yeah.
I do think that if you look at things like Barbenheimer, the phenomenon of that, both Barbie and Oppenheimer were very valuable cinematic achievements in their own right. You know, you had Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig, auteurs, both of them from the independent world, were sort of given keys to the kingdom and made what I thought was a relatively subversive movie within the Hollywood system that worked. And then you have Christopher Nolan, because of what he's proven as a filmmaker. He did the same thing with Dunkirk. Give the world a story that is not as well known, perhaps, and turn it into something compelling that made over $900 million. The problem is there are very few people left that know how to do that. And the studios, like, you can't just hire somebody who made, okay, this person made, like, the guy who's directed the new Captain America movie, Brave New World. No shade on him. I'm not trying to like pick him out, but he's never done anything in his career that would allow you to believe that he could take on a Marvel movie. He was picked for various reasons, which if you look him up, you can see why they went with him. But I don't think that that's a way, and Marvel has been doing that more and more.
Yeah.
I mean, the Russo brothers, like someone like a Nicholas Meyer who made Star Trek 2. Nicholas Meyer didn't know anything about Star Trek. He'd never seen it. And but because he was a classically educated guy, he was a novelist. He'd made films. He'd made Time After Time already. He understood that, okay, the Horatio Hornblower series, classic literature, is where this began. And then he schooled himself in Star Trek, immersed himself in the original series, and realized, okay, here's what this classical, it's a science fiction, action, adventure, allegorical show that it's part Western, part Horatio Hornblower, part all kinds of things. But he was smart enough to understand what it was, because he was a very classically educated person that had a well-rounded base of knowledge.
I was just going to say he's a scholar, exactly. Like
he's a scholar, and we don't have that anymore. We don't. I mean, I don't know if it's a failing. I mean, our public school system, the general knowledge that was imparted to me when I was I went to public school, but it was a great public school. And I think that there's a lot of people now that don't have the actual ability to make films that are transcendent, because it's a lifelong calling. And I think that there's a lot of people that just aren't able to do so. And yet Hollywood's looking around and there's nobody at the studios. People are like, well, the studios have to be able to control. Well, if the people at the studios knew how to make movies, they would be making movies.
Right, but we talked about that earlier.
Facebook.
Well, Robert, we touched on that a little bit earlier, and I still, maybe I'm just being retarded or obtuse. I still don't get the fact that how do you have in Hollywood today people who are greenlighting films, people who are showrunners who haven't seen the classics? It would be like saying, I want to go to university so I can get a degree in English literature and writing, but I'm never going to read Hemingway or Tolstoy or Dostoevsky.
I wish I had the answer for you, George, but look right into Film Threats reporting on the whole Disney mess.
I read
they say right in there, you have people that are working in Disney animation who have never seen Snow White.
But see, how do they hire them?
Never seen Dumbo. The thing is, George, and this is what I learned by talking to people involved with Star Trek and a few other things, it has come to a point where they don't want people who are fans of these things.
Not fans.
For whatever many reason.
Forget fandom. They don't have to be
even
fans.
people who have seen it, been poisoned by it, because they want this new, fresh, woke experience for everybody.
Right.
That's what they want.
Let them have that. Like I'm saying, cool, they have that, but you have to have the alphabet, the history, the background, you have to have
the history is problematic, George. That's what I'm trying to tell you. See, that's the way they view it. Look at how they treat Walt Disney right now. They treat him like he's Hitler.
Yeah, they're ashamed of him. They're ashamed of working for the Disney company, which may be why
I mean,
is trying so hard to make it the Iger company.
That's that attitude. Look, I like to lead by saying humanity is horrible. The human history is just chock-a-block full of atrocity. No other animal on Earth does to its own what we've done to ourselves over the last 4,000 years of recorded history. But this idea that somehow your crusade is going to be, you're going to change the world by taking revenge or eliminating everything you see as wrong, which is in itself wrong-headed. Things change gradually, and it's a holistic change. It's not just one thing. You can't force people to change their nature. You still need people. We're telling stories. The structure of storytelling hasn't changed in thousands of years, and you need people that understand how to tell those stories, but they're not getting hired because when you're a corporation, you don't ask people what movies you've seen. You ask people, what educational credentials do you have? What's on your CV? Well, I went to Princeton and I graduated with an MBA in business. Great. That's exactly what we need you to do. We're going to make you a creative executive at a studio. We're going to give you $200,000 a year. Go make movies. A corporation doesn't have on a sheet, well, what do you know about filmmaking? Because a corporation doesn't know anything about filmmaking. So
right, but
that question.
But then that's like saying a hospital is not going to know, hey, we need a heart surgeon and a thoracic specialist.
But the thing is, those are actual quantifiable jobs that you can actually see and go, okay, if you're here, you went to this medical school, you were a resident here, you have a whole track record of going into the medical profession.
You couldn't put down a list of criteria. You couldn't, like, if you couldn't put a list of criteria down. You must have.
Who would create what? In what entity would create that criteria?
A corporation.
That's the problem. But what corporation doesn't know?
What? Okay,
a corporation that owns an entertainment company doesn't know the first thing about making entertainment. The people that work at studios don't even know how to make movies. If you ask them to go on a set, if you pulled Bob Iger out of his ivory tower and you said, okay, Bob, we need you. You have 3 weeks to plan and execute this low budget indie feature. What Bob would then do is hire all the people that knew how to do that. But he himself doesn't. He's never made a movie.
There's also been that move to sort of diminish the role of the creative in the film production process. That's 100%. One of the things that really struck out about Marvel's success. Marvel goes up from phases 1 to 3, makes a huge amount of money, but during the course of that immense amount of success, the studio is effectively concerned with sales, products, and it's a consumer interested organization. It's not a creative organization. It's interested in dollar value. And like most people who are effectively bean counters, they like things to be systematized and they like them to be controllable. And they like to identify the trends and the patterns in what works. So you can just do the same thing again and it will have the same result. So you got that emergence of joke quotas, for example, in later Marvel films. If 25% of the film is joke, if the cast is made up of X percentage of diverse people, if it deals with X, Y, Z, all the 4-quadrant appeal stuff, then the film will be successful because we figured this out in the back room as the studio system, as the producers, and as the people who have nothing to do with writing. We now know what works mechanically in a movie, and that's just what we want you to do. Just like fill in the gaps for us, but we've set you the basic foundational aspects of your film. So you have very little to do at that point. That's why they bring in people like Nia DaCosta for the Marvels, who isn't going to say no. She's just going to work within the confines that they set. And that produces this repetitive schlock, the sludge pipe of product, which doesn't have anything about the talent and the ingenuity that made the films popular to begin with, because it's no longer about film. It's just about how can we mass produce? And it's not 100%. Just movies. You know, you see the Apple advert that came out recently of them crushing the piano and all the rest of that. Like, that's the same mechanic is in play with that studio as well. What do they have lost touch entirely with the thing that made the thing successful. And they are just a bunch of people sitting behind the scenes saying, well, if we do X, Y, Z, then logically it will follow, it will be successful. And it's not going to work that way because you actually need a creative person involved in the creative process at some point.
No, you're right. I just thought that the next phase they would have learned that, you know, just by diminishing returns, they'd be like, okay, we in phase 1 through 3 for Marvel, like you were talking about, they brought in the Russos, they brought in different directors, but they gave them a little freedom. It seems like 4 and 5 was like, okay, we just slap your name on. We have the.
There was a bigger change that happened there.
Okay,
and here's why they're not going to learn, because that would be admitting a major faux pas that they really screwed up badly. Not did they screw up, they were actively wrong. I have said in many videos that the real thing that screwed the MCU was the disbandment of the Marvel Creative Committee.
Yeah.
In all of the official books and everything, this is promoted or written as something fantastic. This was great, because this is how we were able to get rid of the horrible, evil villain Ike Perlmutter. He was a Trump supporter and who came from the world of toys. And he really wanted to sell toys, and he wanted to make things that were commercially successful and proven in the toy market. And he wanted to do that in the movies. And then you had all the good people that wanted to get rid of him so they could get in diversity, equity, and inclusion instead. And they were able to do it. Success. And then everything went to hell instantly afterwards. Like, you could put on the calendar, this is where that happened. Here you still have some of the influence from the Marvel Creative Committee. Here you have the Russos, who are creative and basically agreed with the Marvel Creative Committee. Here is where they are gone. Now it's the Kevin Feige show only. And there it goes to hell.
Gotcha.
That would be, and for them to have learned something, that would be publicly admitting that the Marvel Creative Committee were right all along. Ike Perlmutter was right all along. And Kevin Feige, when he was able to rule the show completely alone, the way that the public generally thinks that he's been doing the whole time, but when he got his full way, when he didn't have anyone to answer to, that's when it went to hell. For them to learn something, that would be tacitly admitting that Kevin Feige couldn't hack this. We should never have disabandoned the Marvel Creative Committee. So, and there you have ego. These people, the ones who are currently in charge, they can't admit that. The only way that this gets any better is you have to get rid of Kevin Feige. He can't be there anymore because he's not part of the solution. He's part of the problem. You have to get rid of Bob Iger, because he's the reason why the entire Disney company has gone to hell, and why it really can't be fixed, because that would have to be undoing what he has done to it. The people that caused the problem can't necessarily fix it. You need someone new to come in that aren't personally attached to the failures to be able to step in and say, yeah, this isn't working. And since I have no personal blame in this, and I have no ego associated with it, I can go in and make these painful decisions that my predecessor is responsible for this couldn't. That's what needs to happen here. That's when there will be learning. Before that, it's not learning so much as it is denial. Like, no, this can't be true. We have to find some other way to fix this that doesn't involve me taking it on the chin. and that's what's not going to work.
You don't think it's going to speed up, Andre, with another 10% to 20% drop in their stock price?
No.
Okay.
Because it's still the ego. It's still like they can't make that admission.
Well, they are making some admission, and I sent you that little bit about that earlier. But they're going about it in a half-assed way.
Exactly. They can't go all the way. They can go a little bit, but they can't go all the way to do what
Guys, I have to take off.
Yeah, but
I'm
Robert
sorry.
has to run. So
Okay, well, we'll wrap it. We can wrap it here. This was just, we're still working the kinks out. We know how long we're going to go, but Robert, thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Platoon,
Andre,
Tom, Mexican Iron Man, who's not really Mexican, George.
Thank
Hey,
you.
that was confidential information till you put it on 5 different live streams.
we know you are a white boy.
Just so all the members knows that
No, it's not.
Mexican Iron Man is not a YouTuber, and he's not Mexican.
All right, I got an announcement though. Rob, thanks for coming. Just want to tell everybody we're going to start experimenting with something in the after shows, which probably will start as soon as next week. And if you are not only a member, and if you renew and you're at one of the top tiers, you'll get a link and you can come on for the last half hour of the show and get some engagement with whatever panelists are left. And if there aren't any panelists are left, well, you'll get George and his Mexican sidekick, me. So anyway, thanks all for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
I'll see you later.
Rob, if you can say 2 minutes after the show, but yeah. But
We'll call Rob.
Okay,
We'll call
Rob,
you.
Rob,
I have a puppy issue.
Yeah.
Go, puppy.
Nine puppies
Go
that have
take care of it.
escaped, and I'm hearing them barking. Oh, I don't know what's happened.
Go take
And
care of him.
I'm the only one here.
They're taking over the
Y'all
house.
have a wonderful week.
All right, I'll see you guys
It's
later.
the only line of defense.
Thank